News channel.
Repatriation flights begin amid warnings travellers hit by airline chaos could be denied compensation.
Good morning to you at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 30th of August. Thanks for tuning in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Well, leading our news this morning, thousands of British passengers could be denied any compensation at all due to the crisis being beyond government control. Repatriation flights will begin taking off from Gatwick this morning as some travellers face 10-day waits for another flight.
It comes as the Chief Executive of National Air Traffic Services says he's not ruling anything out as the cause of the meltdown, but that an initial investigation suggested it was due to misfiled flight data.
Sadiq Khan says he's sorry to those whose businesses have been hit by ULEZ. Speaking to GB News, he said government has let people down and that bold action now needs to be taken.
The Foreign Secretary will challenge China over its support of Russia in the Ukraine war on a visit to Beijing today. MPs have hit out at the trip, with the former Conservative leader Ian Duncan-Smith comparing it to appeasement.
In sport, Andy Murray has sailed through to the second round of the US Open alongside fellow British players Cameron Norrie and Jack Draper. Paul Coyte with the latest on that.
Yeah, very good day, New York. No sets dropped at all. But one thing I need to get off my chest, I warned Harry Kane about going to Munich. I warned him, he didn't listen, and all my warnings have come to pass.
Yeah. So Spurs went out of the Carnival Cup last night.
I wasn't going to mention that, but that's another story altogether.
OK.
We'll also have your forecast this morning. Rachel Ayers with that.
It's a bright but chilly start to the day for many, but what does the rest of the day have in store and the rest of August? Join me later to find out more.
OK, let's get on top of this airline situation. We're hearing EasyJet will begin operating rescue flights from Gatwick this morning as the fallout from Britain's air traffic control meltdown continues and affecting so many people. Has to be said, though, I was speaking to a couple of people on holiday in Portugal and Spain yesterday, oblivious to everything, and their flights are scheduled to come back again as normal Friday, Saturday, whatever. So there seems to be that sort of window of people not affected by it at all.
Well, also, my beautician yesterday managed to fly in the morning before all the chaos kicked off. So she landed at Heathrow at 9 a.m. but they're all put onto separate flights. Anyway, some people are getting through, but hundreds more not so lucky. Lots of flights, hundreds of flights, I should say. It's thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, with an estimated 250,000 passengers stranded in total.
Now, they face the threat of being denied compensation. This is the latest news due to the disruption being the airlines saying, not our fault, out of our control.
Well, many of you got in touch yesterday with your experiences. Thank you for that. And if you are still stranded, please get in touch. We want to hear your stories and we'll try and bring them to air as well. Danny Underdown, he's stranded on holiday in Turkey and he joins us this morning. Good morning to you, Danny. Thanks for reaching out. Tell us your story. What's happened so far?
So basically, we got to the airport on the bank holiday Monday, told that our flight would be normal, nothing delayed. We haven't heard anything. We got put into a waiting room, waited for about 7-8 hours, not told any information. And then a bus turned up in front of the airport, and we were shipped off to a hotel about 3 hours away from Dallas. Given no information, we still haven't heard anything. Got picked up the next day, thought we was coming back to the airport, moved to another hotel where we still have what's going on. Apart from us searching ourselves to find out an air traffic control issue, we had no news, no what happened back home.
So where are you now, Danny?
About eight miles away from Dalaman Airport.
Is the money holding out?
For some people, there's many of us here who moved about, some with 11-month-old babies being left having to find their own nappies, and we're near a local town, we're having to go find and get translators to try and meet people to find out where best nappies are and stuff like that.
Gosh.
People.
And tell me this, Danny, is this a hardship for you? Is it a minor inconvenience? Is it a major inconvenience? How would you describe, I don't know how it's affected your plans back home, are you just enjoying an extra few days on holiday, or is it a nightmare?
People would think you'd enjoy the extra few days, but where we're uncertain, you can't really yourself because you don't know when the next information will be coming at you. So.
Yeah, and to top it all, we've got a really bad Wi-Fi connection with you.
I was going to say, we almost need a translator. Getting every other word, not your fault. It's frustrating because we want to hear what you have to say, but it sounds very stressful. We hope that you manage to get back soon. Just financially, you're obviously paying for that hotel yourself at the moment. Are you expecting to have to pay for that flight, or how's this going to work?
No, so we haven't paid for anything. We don't know anything apart from what they're moving us to. Apparently, we have a rescheduled flight this afternoon, but we know nothing. 3 different departure times.
Yeah. Well, listen, Danny, Underdown, we've got to say goodbye. The line's just not good enough, I'm afraid, to talk anymore. I was just thinking, good job you weren't locked down or stranded in Australia. I wanted to call you Danny Down Under. But Danny Underdown, thanks for your time this morning. Really appreciate it.
What airport did you fly from?
Gatwick.
Gatwick, OK, right. Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Thanks, Danny. We'll leave it there because, you see, I'm looking at a survey here of the UK's best airports, and I don't think Gatwick features on it, and it falls into my theory. The bigger the airport is, the worse it is, the more impersonal it is. So basically, 4,000 passengers over the past year, and they scored airports, and top of the pops was Liverpool John Lennon, 82% out of 100, based on overall satisfaction and likeliness to recommend to other people. Passengers surveyed described the airport as first class and well run, while staff were praised for being friendly and helpful. Next was London City Airport. A relaxed atmosphere came second with 78%, and low security waiting times, average queue times just about 10 minutes. Aberdeen and Southampton next, and Bournemouth, East Midlands and Newcastle. So there's none of the biggies in there. But, governments are hell-bent on big airports. And I think there should be more smaller airports, which tend to work very, very well.
Apart from when air traffic doesn't work, air traffic control. Listen, the other big story of the day that we're still talking about is the ULEZ expansion, ultra-low emission zone. Mayor Sadiq Khan spoke to GB News' political editor, Christopher Hopes, and he said action needs to be taken on air quality.
No, listen, I'm always sorry for anybody who's suffering adverse consequences because of our policies, but at the same time, I've got to be honest with people and say I've been meeting bereaved mums who's lost their children because of air pollution. I've been meeting a paediatrician today who works with mums who are pregnant, suffering the ill consequences because of air pollution, and babies who are born suffering the ill consequences. I've met today a doctor who runs an asthma clinic, but also I visited Great Ormond Street, the inpatient ward at the Children's Evelina Hospital. I met scientists, health practitioners and others. That's why I'm angry that the government's letting down London and the South East.
And so no matter what you say or what you complain about, nobody's listening to you. It came into operation yesterday, and there it is today. What do you think about that? Do you feel ignored? Let us know your views throughout the programme today.
Well, Harry Phibbs is the local government editor at Conservative Home, and he joins us now. Good morning to you, Harry. Look, we heard there the Mayor of London explaining why he's pressing ahead with this controversial measure. The government, though, yesterday, who effectively appointed him, tasked him with cleaning up the air in London, they were saying this isn't about cleaning up the air, this is about revenue, and he's just trying to make money.
Did they task him with cleaning up the air?
Yeah, that was the remit that they gave the Mayor.
You're going to be the Mayor of London, and one of the main things we want you to do is clean up the air in London.
Yeah. Well, Harry Phibbs can tell us more.
Look, I think everyone would agree that we want to have cleaner air. And, of course, the air in London and the rest of the country is dramatically cleaner than it used to be. And one of the things is that over a period of time that technology's improved, for example, in terms of motor cars, and that gradually people replace an old banger and get a new car, and that has been an advantage. But what this is about is the Mayor of London wanting to raise money. And he's gone about this in a very arrogant way, in a very dishonest way. He's ignored his own consultation results. He's skewed the data to try and get it to fit his own propaganda. And if he was genuinely concerned about pollution, I'll tell you the place in London where pollution is still really bad, it's on the Underground. And that's something where, if he was serious, that's his responsibility, and he could look at how to improve ventilation and do something about that. But instead, what he's doing is trying to have greater controls over people, greater taxes, and hitting the poorest the hardest. And I think that's one of the things that this mayor, who's supposed to be a socialist, is punishing the people that the Labour Party was supposed to be protecting. It's fine for the rich who can afford a brand new compliant vehicle, but it's the poorest who are going to be hit the hardest. I think there's genuine anger over this.
Well, such is politics, Harry, and that's what you're there to talk about today, the intricacies of that. Let's talk about the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly. He's going to China. What do you think of that?
I think it's astonishing, really, when you think about it, that we've got this country that is. I mean, you normally would have these visits to countries that are friends and allies, or at least countries that we regard as responsible, that we can do business with, and that's certainly having that visit sends out that general message. And this is a regime which is engaged in genocide against minorities, persecuted people for their religious beliefs. It's engaged in slave labour. It's obviously hostile towards Taiwan. It's broken the agreements that they made with us over the guarantees for Hong Kong. Of course, they're allied with Putin. I mean, this is an astonishing signal to them that they can get away with it. You think, what wouldn't they be able to get away with? I do say that, of course, China has made a lot of economic progress since the time of Mao, that they've moved away from communism in terms of allowing some private business, and that has dramatically reduced poverty in China. So the lives for the ordinary Chinese are much better, and that's a good thing. But in other ways, it's still a totalitarian dictatorship, and we should not be appeasing them. We should not be sending this sort of business as usual message.
And a diplomatic tightrope for the Foreign Secretary to walk. He'll be aware that his foreign minister counterpart in China disappeared 6 months ago. He'll also be aware that there's a Foreign Affairs Select Committee report into China being released today whilst he's there, and be mindful of the fact that under Cameron and Osborne, there was lots of criticism for cozying up too much to China. So he has to be very careful on lots of fronts, doesn't he?
Yes, I think what the Foreign Office, the Sir Humphreys, the diplomats, they're always on the side of appeasement, of trying to smooth over any dissent over human rights. But I think really the Foreign Secretary should be less deferential to his officials and take more seriously those, including people, senior people in his own party, like Ian Duncan-Smith, who have spoken very, very forcefully about this. And in many ways, the behaviour of the Chinese in some of their espionage and their hostility wars is similar to what we've seen with Russia. And in many countries around the world would obviously be wishing that they'd taken a tougher line on Russia some years before and hadn't allowed themselves to get so dependent on Russian energy and all the rest of it. And I think we need to have a similarly hard-headed, realistic approach to China. This is sending all the wrong messages.
Just finally, Harry, I mean, the line from the Foreign Office will be the Foreign Secretary is there to hold China's feet to the flames. I suggest it's more holding his lips to their bottom, really, what this is all about, sucking up to them.
Oh, of course it is. I mean, that's risible for the Foreign Office. The idea that we're sending a message to the Chinese government that we're going to be taking a tough line by sending the Foreign Secretary there. Of course, it's absolutely craven, and I think a lot of Conservatives will be dismayed by it, but not just Conservatives, people from across the political spectrum.
Thank you, Harry. Thanks for your take on things. Harry's the local government editor of Conservative Home. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, with the time at 6:15. I do have to say, there's so many good things. I mean, of all spine and human rights and all this awfulness. Chinese cuisine is just superb.
Except it's Anglo-Chinese cuisine. I think Chinese cuisine in Beijing would probably...
I've tasted Chinese cuisine, yes. I think Chinese cuisine is quite superb.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of it in Hong Kong.
Like monkey brain and snakes.
No, I think it's done very well.
Eyeballs.
I think
That's
it's a good
classic Chinese cuisine.
It's a good way of cooking. But yeah, and Anglo-Chinese cuisine is very good.
I love Anglo-Chinese cuisine.
Very good.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
can't deny. Right, 6:16, as Eamonn was saying, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. The first of EasyJet's repatriation flights returning passengers to the UK following an air traffic control fault will take off for London Gatwick today. The failure, which led to thousands of cancellations and delays, was apparently caused by misfiled flight data.
A hero police officer who was hit by a train while trying to save a man on the tracks has died. Nottinghamshire police said the 46-year-old was taken to Queen's Medical Centre and died yesterday with his family at his side. Flags across the force will now be flown at half-mast as a mark of respect.
And officials in Florida are warning of potential death and catastrophic devastation as the state prepares for Hurricane Idalia. The Category 4 storm is due to hit the state's west coast this morning as authorities call on residents to evacuate immediately. And as you can see, we're looking at the live picture there. And we're being warned, actually, that this is going to be on the same scale and ferocity as Hurricane Katrina that you'll remember devastated parts of Louisiana. I think it was 2005. So a lot of worry about what's happening in Florida. President Biden approving an emergency declaration for the state, and the governor, Ron DeSantis, warning residents time is running out to evacuate.
Nancy Lam popularised Chinese cuisine in the UK. Of course, she had a TV cookery programme as well. And I was blessed enough that on my way home from many things in London, I was able to stop off at her restaurant. And she's quite eccentric, it has to be said. And she would give me access to her kitchen, and we would sit there and eat into the early hours. There's no better way to sit and chat. Not that you get a word in edgeways, but an amazing lady and some amazing cuisine that she would cook up as well. Do you fancy Chinese cuisine?
We've never had a Chinese together.
Have we not?
No, I think we should do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I have an idea. Yeah, I'll tell you. I have an idea.
Make a plan.
Yes,
I was just talking about that hurricane in Florida, and I have to say, the weather in America always terrifies me. You know, apart from the gun control issues,
it's
another
bigger.
reason I couldn't
Everything's
cope with
bigger
living
in
there.
America.
Yeah, and you know, not only do they have those twisters, what do you call them?
Twisters. hurricanes, tornadoes.
Tornado Alley. These hurricanes, and you imagine sitting there, your livelihood, your home, your possessions, and being told to evacuate, time's running out. And Florida as well. Paul Coit was on holiday there just the other week.
Yeah, well, when you hit the season where it is now. I do object to these stupid names. I heard a news reader today saying, and of course, and Hurricane Katrina, of course. I went, what? As if we remember which hurricane was called what.
Oh, I do remember Katrina just because of the Kanye
but
West
wait a minute,
fiasco.
You would, but you're not normal. Idalia, what sort of name is that? Oh, God, that's going to be on the tip of my tongue all the time, that Hurricane Idalia, when it happened.
Idalia.
What a lot of nonsense. So anyway, that keeps the Met Office happy, doesn't it?
Yeah, OK.
Yeah, scary, very, very scary.
Speaking of the Met Office, let's go to Rachel Ayres.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So to start Wednesday, it's been a much brighter morning than it was yesterday with plenty of sunshine around. We have already seen some showers across the north and west, and elsewhere we'll start to see that cloud bubbling up, allowing some showers to develop as we go through the rest of this morning. Though we will start to see those showers peter out from the west as we head into this afternoon. Temperatures today will be similar to what we saw yesterday, so highs maybe into the low 20s, but still feeling pretty pleasant in that sunshine with those light winds. Now, as we head through the rest of this afternoon and into this evening, slowly we'll see those showers petering out from the west, so plenty of clear spells, especially across northern and eastern areas. But looking down towards the southwest, we've got clouds and outbreaks of rain moving in during the early hours of Thursday. So a warmer start there, but further north and east, a pretty chilly start to the day. So throughout Thursday, we'll slowly see this cloud and rain making its way northeastwards. Always drier and brighter across Scotland and the far northeast, but for some central parts of England and maybe the far east of East Anglia, starting to see some cloud into the afternoon. Heaviest rain will be across the far south, where we could also see the odd thunderstorm. So temperatures a little bit more muted than of late, but still getting into the high teens or just into the 20s.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Maria, will you come in here? The reason I'm standing up here, we've had a viewer complaint. Maria!
She's in the shot.
Quick, Maria. Right, Maria, you lower my chair without me falling off and killing myself. But the reason we're doing this is that a viewer complained.
Which viewer was that?
Her name's Miss Ruth Langsford, right? And she's phoned in to say that she doesn't like the position my seat...
Yeah, but didn't your telly wife already complain about it, but you ignored me?
Oh.
I'm glad you listened to Ruthie.
Right, but as long as if I fall off, I don't know, is it all right?
I think that's perfect.
Push me in, Maria. You see, people think these things happen easily. Is that okay, Mrs. Langsford? Is that okay? Is that okay? That meets your requirements today?
I'm happy, so Ruth will be happy.
So is my head's got to be...
Yeah. You can't be cutting your head off with a halo. I know you have this halo above your head. But...
So you're happy? My TV wife's happy?
You've got two women to keep
happy. My real
happy
wife's happy? Viewers, are you happy? Let me know 22 minutes past 6. I'm very happy because Paul Coit will be with us next with all the sport. Andy Murray sailing through to the next round of the US Open.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Ms Langford approves.
Oh, does she?
She's happy.
She wasn't happy.
Well, she's almost happy, yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, we just can't spend all day negotiating. If these chairs were electric or something, it could go up and down.
Anyway, with lots more to come on the programme this morning, including Paul Coit, which is going to always cheer everybody up. We're talking to Kinsey Schofield at 7:15.
Yes.
This is all about Prince Harry's new Netflix documentary. I don't know if that's something to be excited about or not. This time it's about Invictus Games, and Kinsey will have a view on that. It's been released, I think, 8 a.m. this morning.
Is it?
Yeah.
Don't forget to
Big
miss
drop.
it. Right. 7:20. The British Museum. Well, apparently they're saying, oh, we're getting some of these artefacts back. They're not saying where they're getting them back from. So I'd like to know...
They're bidding on eBay.
Who has them? Why did they have them?
Will they
How
be
are they getting them
arrested?
back? Are they buying them back? Are they not? But basically, if you've got any old junk, give it to the British Museum,
Eamonn.
and people will pay to actually go. Well, they won't pay because if you're a foreign tourist, you don't pay anything. You know, museums. What is the point? Why don't they just have British stuff in British museums?
Well, because we used to just go and
Steal.
commandeer it all.
So,
but we've got a
we've
very
stolen it all,
heavy-hitting
and now
archaeologist
someone's
coming on.
stolen it of us,
Well-
and we're getting it back. So it's all thievery.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit more nuanced, probably. But we'll speak to an archaeologist from Egypt, I think,
I remember
later.
the first time I saw a mummy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, bandaged up. There's one in Belfast, you know.
Yeah?
She had little bony fingers and everything, an Egyptian mummy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really scary.
Yeah.
And she still got her teeth.
Oh, my word. I'd quite like to be embalmed.
She looked a bit better than some people who have got bad teeth in real life. But anyway, her teeth and her hands and everything.
They knew what they were doing. Yeah, yeah.
That was at
I hope
the
they screenshot that and
Belfast
put that
Museum.
on the socials. Do it one more time, just to make sure we get a good screenshot.
If you have any pictures of your mummy, mummies in general,
No, please don't send them. Or if you want to, send them to @Eamonn Holmes.
GB Views, Oh, I'm watching a ghost story at the minute on BBC iPlayer, and about a Welsh farmhouse which is haunted. Scary.
I can't watch these things because, you know, I've moved into a 500-year-old house. There's bound to have been people dead in
Bound
there.
to be ghosts there, yeah.
Oof.
gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet at GB News. Wednesday morning, even though it feels like Tuesday, I looked through the back pages and they stack up like this. The Express, first of all, Virgil van Dijk. No joke now, Virgil. The Liverpool centre-back has been charged with improper abusive language. In good face and longer bad.
Why are you giggling?
Because people get so offended by bad language, you know. But anyway, Man U could launch a late swoop for out-of-favour Mark Kirkell. Who the heck's he? Who's he?
Cucurella.
Cucurella.
Who's he?
Cucurella, Cucurella. You remember Cucurella?
Never heard of him.
Oh, yeah, that's him. Yeah.
He used to play for Brighton, and he's a defender, and he used to be sent out on loan after his high-profile 60 million quid move to Chelsea. You couldn't make it up, could you? And the Star, you like this one, Paul. Follow the leader, Eric. Follow the leader, right? Leader.
Yeah.
Lederhosen, yeah.
He's the Hosen one.
Yeah. Bayern Munich want the Eric Dyer at Spurs to join his former teammate Harry Kane in Munich and presumably in Lederhosen. Paul, what do you think of all that?
Well, what can I say? I think, should we start with the Harry Kane thing? It's interesting because I warned Harry Kane on this show, 24th of July, and I said, listen, don't go. There are certain reasons why you shouldn't go.
Because they're going to put you in shorts and with a funny hat with a feather in it.
Well, shorts they'll wear anyway, obviously, playing football, but it's the style of the shorts. I think, I think we have just a proof of what I actually said back in July, which has come to pass. He will have to dress regularly, if he's a Bayern Munich player, in the lederhosen. So there we are, and this is just for Harry and his family. I know you're watching, Harry. I know you enjoy the show. This is how you will have to dress at least 3 times a week if you go to Bayern Munich. And there's the Bayern Munich team. There we are. There you go. What do you think about that? So I said that, warned them. He didn't listen. Not a word. Oh, no, I'm going to go off to Bayern Munich. It won't be like that. I'm sure everything's going to be fine. And then, yesterday, along with Thomas Muller and Alphonso Davies, who's Canadian. Let's have a look and see what Harry had to go through. There he is.
Is he a tall lad?
He is a tall lad, about 6'1".
Wears it well. Thank you.
He's a young, very fit man, of course. But there he is. Whether he's truly happy in the lederhosen, it doesn't matter how many millions you get there for playing for Bayern Munich, you're still got to wear the gear. He was actually in an interview there and he was going, they said, well, how do you feel about wearing that? And what he was actually saying at the time was, they're quite tight, but I'll get used to it. He was actually answering it as if he was actually playing in a football game, saying, well, obviously they're quite tight, but after a while I'll get used to it and hopefully things will work out for me with lederhosen in the future.
And good job he's had his 4 kids now.
Yeah, it's okay. Very uncomfortable.
The female version of that.
Yeah, very attractive.
I think it's very attractive.
Are they lady kind of
lady hosen.
Lady hosen.
Bustier,
yes.
the lady hosen.
So lady hosen.
What is it actually called? I've forgotten now.
I don't know.
But it's very nice.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Well, I think for Oktoberfest it would be nice if maybe the two of you could dress up like that.
I've got a picture of me in one. I'm going to dig it out.
Have you?
You talk amongst yourselves.
Why would you?
Went to a festival in Amsterdam. Don't ask.
You dressed up on a Friday night, did you?
Why were you dressed as a Bavarian in Amsterdam?
I don't know. I'm going to find it.
Meanwhile, Virgil van Dijk has been charged by the FA for acting in an improper manner.
Yes. Now, you sort of said, didn't you, he swore and used inappropriate language. See, what happened, it was in the game against Newcastle.
Yeah,
you saw that, right?
It was a dodgy send-off.
You think it was dodgy?
I do think it was.
I thought it was right. I thought it was a red card.
Okay.
So it was the foul on Alexander Isak. He got very upset. But the thing is, he's now the captain of Liverpool.
Yeah.
So, you've got to act properly. So there he is.
Wait a minute. What are you saying that for? I mean, Roy Keane was the captain of Man United. Did he act properly?
Yeah, but I don't think it was right. It didn't make it right in my eyes.
It's what you're used to.
It is. I don't think it's right. And especially now, you've got the Referees Association and FIFA and everybody is saying, look, all this has got to stop with the dissent towards referees and the way referees are treated. It's got to end. So, start of the season and they'll be punished. So, he gets a red card and now, for his improper behaviour straight afterwards, wouldn't walk off, took about 3 minutes to get off the pitch. Just get off the pitch, you get a red card. They looked at it in VAR, just get off the pitch, and so he's probably going to get a ban,
so
which I think
this is them saying the referee's the boss, not you.
Correct, which you've always said, haven't you?
The referee's decision is final.
Absolutely.
Unless it's against my team.
Of course. Yeah. Apart from if it's Roy Keane misbehaving, as he obviously never did, and if it's against your team, then...
Bruno Fernandes, you see, we've got as captain now. He gives it a bit of...
He does give it a bit of that. But you know what? He gives it a bit of that. I'd give it a bit of that.
Yeah.
Get off the pitch.
Okay.
It's the way to do it.
Okay.
We do a bit of tennis. You want to know a bit about tennis?
the US Open.
Okay.
Tell me about this, because Andy Murray absolutely sailed through.
Well, yeah, I mean, he did sail through. He wasn't at his best. I mean, it was straight sets, but it did take 3 hours. He was playing against Corentin Moutet of France. Now, he's another one, gives it a bit of this, a little bit of trouble, also trying to put Andy Murray off. Some of the things he was doing underarm serves. No need for that.
So Nick Kyrgios School of Tennis.
Exactly.
I hate that this is spreading.
Smashing rackets on the ground. And then he wanted... How about this? He wanted pickle juice. So he said... Seriously. He said, I want pickle juice. And then he goes to the umpire, who then says, we don't have pickle juice. And he's going, I had pickle juice in Cincinnati. Why should I not have...
Vinegar.
Well, I don't know. I don't even know what pickle juice is, for crying out loud.
It must be vinegar.
Well, I don't think you want to... Yeah, give me some vinegar. Anyway, and
some
then...
people do take vinegar,
Yeah.
Really?
Cider vinegar,
yeah.
don't they? It's a sort of joint thing. But,
well,
no,
that's what he wanted. He wanted the pickle juice.
I'm glad he was knocked out by our boy.
Now, talking about being knocked out, some bad... Well, what way do you describe them? The Carnival Cup last night.
Yes.
Well, the real shocker is Salford. They're in Division 2.
Yep.
Leeds down to the Championship, but Leeds is still, big team.
Of course they are.
Big players.
Huge scalp.
And penalty shootout, Salford beat them.
They did.
And that's a war of the roses, that one.
Really is, yeah, of course it is. 9-8, it went on penalties, because now, with the Carabao Cup at this point, 90 minutes, then penalties, so they don't play extra time, no replays. And so Salford City, I mean, it's a brilliant result for them. So who knows? I mean, can you imagine Manchester United, Gary Neville and all the old class of '94, etc.?
Yeah, cheering them on.
Could well happen. Spurs lost to Fulham, went out on penalties. There's a lot of Spurs fans are really upset about the changes that were made, 9 changes. But as Ange Postecoglou says, it's going to take time. You've got to trust me. It's going to take a little while to actually everything to gel.
Anybody that doesn't treat the Carabao Cup, the League Cup, seriously is mad. The current holders did us a lot of good last year winning that. Everybody likes to win a trophy.
I agree.
Yeah.
So many managers do it for years. Let's make changes. It's early on. But all fans want is to win a trophy. So play your best side.
But all owners want is to stay in the Premier League.
Correct.
Yeah.
Money against trophies. A lot of fans want trophies. Owners want money. But obviously there's got to be some sort of link.
See, there's a great story about Chelsea, who loaded with money and can pay 60 million quid for a defender any time they want. And they have withdrawn a 10 quid subsidy for domestic games to get their supporters' clubs to matches within London, and they've withdrawn that, which hasn't gone down well.
I'm not surprised. But what's interesting, the way football clubs run, they're all run virtually as different businesses, the different departments. So you get one department and say, well, how comes you're paying a player £300,000 a week?
You can't afford
but we can't do £10,000. But we're run as different businesses, which is not really an excuse because, let's face it, it's all the same thing. Yeah. So it's interesting how, I don't want to use a pun like own goals, but that's pretty much what they are.
That
so many
was
clubs
an own goal, my
will
friend.
do things. Silly
you back
own goal.
later?
Yeah. I will see. We'll see. I'm going out to try and find some lederhosen. If I can, I'll be back. If I can't, I doubtful.
Good lad. OK, thank you very much indeed. Paul Coy.
Pleasure.
Right, with the time at 6:35.
Did you find that picture?
I did. Well, it's not the best one. There'll be more pictures. That's the only one I could find. It's not a great one.
Were you drinking the beer there as well?
Probably.
Right. Well, we'll send that to the gallery and then we'll keep it for the viewers.
OK, I'll find a better one. That's the only one I can find under pressure. Right, stay with us. We're debating the ULEZ expansion, the ultra-low emission zone, as we go through the papers with...
Well, not him. No, with David Miller and Scarlett Maguire.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9.
only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at your newspaper front pages. Just chatting to Scarlett Maguire, who's standing by to review them with us, with David Mellor. But we'll take a look, first of all, at the Telegraph newspaper, talking about the ultra-low emission zone. It's leading with London Mayor Sadiq Khan facing a revolt over the expansion.
Not a penny to compensate air chaos victims, says the Mail. Thousands of families left stranded by air traffic control and the meltdown. And apparently they're finding it very hard, if possible at all, to get compensation.
The UK can no longer be described as a Christian nation, says The Times, who are reporting on polling of Anglican clergy.
Well, that's an interesting story. And The Guardian, Britain must take China's human rights abuses seriously, say MPs. James Cleverly has landed in China today for a first official UK visit for 5 years. And I'd like to, we've got David Mellor and Scarlett Maguire now to talk about the papers. I was saying earlier, David, James Cleverly going to China. I'm sure you're a man who could see the worth of that. You can also see the problems with that as well. But I do laugh when you get a statement from the Foreign Office saying he's there to hold China's feet to the fire. I'd say he's there to kiss their backsides, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You should have gone into politics. You have
Diplomacy.
a natural feeling for it.
So what would you say? What would you say to the wisdom of Cleverly in China? You can see why he's going there.
I think people are going because people are going. You know, in other words, others have gone, so he feels he has to go.
And if we don't go, someone else will go and do a trade deal with them.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, the threat of China is quite profound. The amount of money they're putting into armaments, the amount of, just on pollution. You think of what China is doing. China is a very bad member of the international community. And for us to go over there and suck up to them is not, perhaps, a very sensible idea.
Scarlett, on that, it's interesting, you know, there's so many elements to this. Obviously, all the Taiwanese aggression, the situation in Hong Kong, a number of the people that the Chinese government have got on a wanted list seeking refuge here in the UK. We've taken a huge number of refugees here. And then the idea that we're going to have any clout, lecture them on it.
The problem is we're a small country with very little clout. And on top of that, the list that you have just given of human rights abuses, of course, there's the Uyghurs, who are being treated appallingly. They're being re-educated. China is quite frightening, and it's also got incredible reach into other countries like Africa, where they've put an awful lot of money. It's very weird. You go to Senegal, and there's a wonderful statue of liberation paid for by and built by the Chinese, right? No question about it. So it is. I think it's a real problem. But obviously, it's quite obvious that it's about money, isn't it? As David says, it's all about trade.
That's the point I was about to say.
Yeah.
That the real hope in all of this is that the Chinese economy is in a very bad way. You know, they've overborrowed. Their property sector is hugely overborrowed, and now that's all beginning to catch up with them. But, when you think the threats that China is making against Taiwan, the fact that, the leader of China hasn't got something better to do but threaten a little neighbour that they have never actually controlled. When Chiang Kai-shek left mainland China, he settled in Taiwan. There was never any question of the Chinese actually having it. But you just feel with China, they are extremely difficult to deal with, and they have a unique ability to maybe Mr. Putin is up there as well, to actually behave very badly while blaming everybody else.
And apparently a huge youth unemployment problem, and the way they've dealt with it is by stop publishing the figures.
Yes. But what's interesting is if you read books out of China, that actually there's a whole, I mean, I was going to say underground, but it's not underground. There's a whole youth culture that is going on, that you have these sort of grey men at the top, being incredibly oppressive, and then meanwhile you have a lot of and I mean, and the other thing is of course the deep corruption in China, so that you know, if you're in the party, if you're rich, your children are rich, they're sent over here.
So bottom line, Scarlett, good idea for Cleverly to go or not?
I think you have to be honest and stop pretending that he's going to do anything about human rights.
Yeah, yeah. David?
An exercise in futility.
OK.
Scarlett, let's talk about airport chaos. It's on the front of virtually every paper this morning.
Absolutely.
And look, so many people having to shell out of their own pocket, and people saying, I simply don't have a spare £3,000 to sort this mess out.
I know. So these poor people, and it certainly has got nothing to do with them. It's all of a sudden the planes are all in the wrong place. They're not landing. It began yesterday. It could go on for days, and they're having to pay for the hotels to put them on. And we're talking family. We're not just talking one person. And then they've been told that because it's not the airline's fault, there will be no compensation.
Which you also kind of understand. I mean, the airlines haven't caused this problem, and the idea that Ryanair would have to pay compensation to a passenger who then booked a flight back with a different airline from you could see.
But that guy from Ryanair always moans about.
Yeah, he's come out saying
he rather destroys every case that he had.
Yeah.
But I mean, the real problem seems to me to be this: they're blaming some rogue French airline for having filed the wrong flight plan. But should that really be enough to create that level of chaos?
No, it shouldn't.
What would be interesting is, instead of the sort of Secretary of State for Transport sort of muttering amiably, why don't you get on and find out what's going on and do something about it?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, why do you have ministers?
Problem. Give us a solution.
Well, and it should be. We should have some system that deals with. I mean, if you put in something wrong, it doesn't mean the whole system crashes
Well, it
for
does
24
here
hours.
every morning. I mean, there's always somebody turns on their mobile phone and things go awry and whatever. That's technology for you. Technology is a great thing when it works, but when we become dependent on it and it doesn't work, we're all up the
And
Khyber.
I do think there's
He's a philosopher king, this man.
Well, no, but I do think that this is a reminder to all of us about the dangers of becoming too dependent, and in all of our industries, whether it is in television, whether it is in airlines, because when these things go wrong, they really go wrong. And whereas things might have been slower manually in the past, perhaps you have, I don't know.
Well, if I was running an airline, relatively we're talking about, 250,000 people displaced or so. Spread over the different airlines, this is a relatively small cost for all of them. They've got a flight itinerary, they've got a passenger list. They should just press a button and say, there's £500 to everybody, or 750 or whatever it is. They press the button, Mr. Miller, Miss Maguire was on that flight, whatever, boom, 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 boom. That's straight into your account. And that bides over people for a week.
But, I mean, the point is that all people do is make money. So my daughter's Ryanair flight was held up for 2 hours. She gets to Perugia, and then the car hire company then fined her for being late. Right? So that was another 50 euros that she had to pay.
Will you forgive me for saying that the answer is not going abroad? I mean, I used to go abroad all the time.
Yeah.
And this summer I've stayed either here or in my little pad in Dorset, surrounded by my a whole lot of animals, different animals from what I find here, and basically I've loved it.
Yeah.
And I don't give up for people who are. I say to them, don't fly.
We get a lot of emails saying
out of
that,
it.
actually.
Yeah.
You're not alone in that feeling. We also get a lot of emails, don't we, Eamonn, about this ULEZ story. The Telegraph and the Times, well, it's on the front of the Telegraph, but the Times covering it, page 11.
Yeah, I mean, of course, because, page 11 should be higher up, but actually every paper has got it. And it either says that he's under great pressure, the mayor, to not allow a whole lot of fines to be inflicted on people when it's not clear that people understand exactly what's going on. But even more so, we get civil disobedience. and hundreds of these cameras will be put out of use. It amazes me that Sadiq Khan has managed to get this policy through. Indeed, has managed to be re-elected as mayor of London. You know, I mean, I have no time for Sadiq Khan. I think that the idea of a mayor who has no charisma is bad. But the other problem is that he doesn't seem to have any kind of grasp of the reality of this as perceived by normal people. They think it's all, and I'm quite glad that Scarlett's shaking
completely disagree.
The Labour, I know you do, but the Labour Party is up the creek in a barbed wire canoe with this policy.
Could it
Let me just tell
Labour
you.
the election?
No, I mean, I think one of the things that cost Labour the election was being neither one thing nor the other.
The election next year.
No. The thing about ULEZ, I mean, what's interesting, so this is the third go at it. I mean, I don't have a car because mine was going to fail ULEZ, so I got rid of it. And it's easy for me because I live in central London. What's really important is that 9 out of 10 people are not affected at all, right? And for the others, there is a scrappage.
But 10%, if that's a
I know,
figure,
but not. But
you see, but the real issue.
David,
let Scarlett have her say a second.
Let me have my say.
Am I bullying Scarlett?
You are bullying me.
You've got to give her.
Surely
absolutely. It's quite important. I mean, every time there is a fuss, and then it goes when people realise. They adjust their lives. And yes, it's awful that there are losers and there is a scrappage scene. And actually, this is a Conservative policy, right? And it is going in other cities. And in other cities, the government is giving money. And in London, we have to find our own money to pay for it.
So
but what I find so interesting...
I'm talking about ULEZ. We've been doing it all the time. So I want to go on.
It seems all right. It seems all right, according to these newspapers. It seems all right to break the law on ULEZ. And yet, you have...
I want to talk about a big own goal here, front page of the Times, the couple of minutes we've got left here. And if you're going to score an own goal, you say, Britain's not a Christian country. Who says so?
The clergy.
The clergy themselves, the Christian Anglican clergy.
I mean, I was brought up as an Anglican. I spent years singing in church choirs when I was too young to know better. But the reality of it is, if anyone is to blame for Britain not being a Christian country...
It's the Church of England.
It's the Church of England. I mean, the Archbishop of Canterbury, when did you last hear him make a serious attempt to explain, I don't know, what was God's purpose in the pandemic and so on? He uses his position as Archbishop to make a whole lot of tendentious political comments that have nothing to do with religion at all.
I do think there is a worrying decline in morality. I think with the decline of Christianity, without people going to church, I think narcissism, I think social media actually has replaced religion. It's become this kind of drug that
Football has replaced religion. Football is religion.
It might have done, but I feel as though social media, and this is my own little bugbear, but I really do think everyone's walking around their own little narcissistic bubble, selfies, and not thinking about what they can do for other people, which is how we were brought up.
I think we've been saying this for decades, and I really don't think there's any change. And I think the problem is, David, is the church can't win, because actually, if you read this survey, what the clergy are saying is we should do same-sex marriage. We should move with the times. The church is completely riven. Every time they do that, they're being accused of just going.
Where is the leadership, the spiritual leadership?
Well, if they were a business, they'd be taken over by a bigger business or some type of different business. So I'll put this to you to think next time. Why doesn't it just the Church of England give up and amalgamate with the Catholic Church?
Well, that'll never happen.
Well, it may well do. It may well do.
Never happen.
And you get a stronger, more definite leadership, whether you agree with it or not. But we leave that thought on there.
Under Pope Eamonn.
Yes.
That would be my nomination.
And he would do what?
Well, you would be Pope Eamonn.
Oh, come on, that's no, you can't say that. Right, on that note, we have to wrap, because we have to talk about Prince Harry with Kinsey and LA. We're running out of time, so we have to say thank you very much to David and Scarlett. More from them just after.
In an hour's time, Prince Harry has got a new Netflix documentary out. Heart of Invictus will be released.
Yeah, I'm sure you've all got your recorders ready. Can't wait. You'll be switching over, not from GB News Breakfast to watch that. Kinsey, is this going to be a flop?
I mean, I think that PR-wise, it's going to be beneficial towards Prince Harry. But you're right, the documentary is Prince Harry's first solo project with Netflix and follows 6 people competing in the 2022 Invictus Games. The film is said to be incredibly emotional and raw and focuses on the highs and lows of those competitors. Prince Harry's the executive producer, and he's also sprinkled throughout the movie. Monday night, there was a premiere south of Montecito in Chula Vista, California, where the Duke of Sussex surprised the movie theater with an appearance. He met with veterans and even stopped for selfies. You were just talking about those. The crowd was thrilled. This obviously is all building up to the 2023 Invictus Games in Germany, kicking off September 9th through the 16th. The competition developed by Prince Harry to encourage wounded service people to heal through sports. Meghan is expected to miss the opening ceremony, but will attend a portion of the event. Harry is also going to be stopping by your neck of the woods. That's happening September 7th for the Well Child Awards.
But not going to be popping in to see his dad or brother, apparently. They're snubbing him.
I don't think so. I don't think it's, time heals all wounds, but not this time. I think it's going to take another minute or two.
Other royal news, the rehabilitation of Prince Andrew, for instance, the Waleses having very, very long holidays. Anything else you've got to report on for us?
Well, I think that this is a crazy story. Eamonn, the Mirror reporting that King Charles overruled Prince William to welcome Prince Andrew back into the family. One source described Prince William as having his wings clipped in this scenario. It was previously reported that Prince William had not wanted to be seen with Prince Andrew in public at all. In fact, you'll remember the Prince of Wales allegedly said he would boycott the Garter Parade at Windsor Castle if Andrew participated. As a result, Andrew was shut out. This is, to royal watchers, I think that this is a bit of whiplash because the Jeffrey Epstein story continues to evolve. Here in the States, A&E just released a documentary called The Secrets of Prince Andrew. And don't forget, Harry's bosses, Netflix, right now at this very moment, filming Scoop, which is about the 2019 BBC interview. So Andrew's story, Andrew's scandals, they're not done yet.
Right. So you would say, Kinsey, Andrew would still be a liability to the royal family and therefore a danger to keep him close.
I absolutely believe that. I do think that he continues to be a liability. And I think a lot of royal watchers are scratching their heads right now trying to understand what the royal family strategy is.
OK. Kinsey Schofield, always good to see you. Thanks for the royal update.
And remember, Invictus on Netflix at 8 o'clock this morning to be released. That's Greenwich Mean Time. Rachel Ayres with the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So to start Wednesday, it's been a much brighter morning than it was yesterday with plenty of sunshine around. We have already seen some showers across the north and west, and elsewhere we'll start to see that cloud bubbling up, allowing some showers to develop as we go through the rest of this morning. Though we will start to see those showers peter out from the west as we head into this afternoon. Temperatures today will be similar to what we saw yesterday, so highs maybe into the low 20s, but still feeling pretty pleasant in that sunshine with those light winds. Now, as we head through the rest of this afternoon and into this evening, slowly we'll see those showers petering out from the west, so plenty of clear spells, especially across northern and eastern areas. But looking down towards the southwest, we've got clouds and outbreaks of rain moving in during the early hours of Thursday. So a warmer start there, but further north and east, a pretty chilly start to the day. So throughout Thursday, we'll slowly see this cloud and rain making its way northeastwards. Always drier and brighter across Scotland and the far northeast, but for some central parts of England and maybe the far east of East Anglia, starting to see some cloud into the afternoon. Heaviest rain will be across the far south, where we could also see the odd thunderstorm. So temperatures a little bit more muted than of late, but still getting into the high teens or just into the 20s.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Rachel, thank you very much indeed with the weather picture there, whether you're watching, listening to us online, on radio, on TV.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Repatriation flights begin amid warnings travellers hit by airline chaos could be denied compensation.
Hello there, good morning. Very nice to see you. The time 7 o'clock on this Wednesday, 30th of August. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News, Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Thousands of British passengers could be denied any compensation due to the crisis being beyond government control. Repatriation flights will begin taking off from Gatwick this morning as some travellers face 10-day waits for another flight.
It comes as the chief executive of National Air Traffic Services says he's not ruling anything out as the cause of the meltdown, but that an initial investigation suggested it was due to misfiled flight data.
Sadiq Khan says he's sorry to those whose businesses have been affected by the ultra-low emission zone. Speaking to GB News, London Mayor said the government has let people down and that bold action needs to be taken.
The Foreign Secretary will challenge China over its support of Russia in the Ukraine. On a visit to Beijing today, MPs have hit out at the trip with former Conservative leader Ian Duncan-Smith, comparing it to appeasement.
And in the sport, Andy Murray has sailed through to the second round of the US Open alongside fellow British players Cameron Norrie and Jack Draper.
Latest forecast weather-wise coming your way with Rachel Ayres.
It's a bright but chilly start to the day for many, but what does the rest of the day have in store and the rest of August? Join me later to find out more.
To our top story this morning, and EasyJet will begin operating rescue flights from London Gatwick this morning as the fallout from Britain's air traffic control meltdown continues.
Hundreds more flights cancelled yesterday. An estimated 250,000 passengers stranded in total. They face the threat of being denied compensation because this is beyond airline control. Let's get the latest on that with the Independent's travel correspondent Simon Calder.
Yeah.
Simon, what have you got to say on that?
OK, great news, of course, that EasyJet are putting on flights to bring people back from locations such as Tunisia and the Greek island of Rhodes. Many people stranded there. EasyJet also putting on bigger planes to some destinations in order to bring back more people earlier. But crucially, there's a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation around this morning, Eamonn, on the subject of compensation and getting your money back. Those are two different things. So I need to be absolutely clear that if your flight is cancelled, the airline has a strict obligation to deliver to you a duty of care, getting you back as soon as possible, getting you a hotel room, paying for your meals. All of that the airline has to do. And if they're not booking a hotel for you, then you keep the receipts and you claim it back. But nobody is going to get cash compensation because it's clearly not the airline's fault. So there's some reports saying that people are incurring hotel bills going into thousands of pounds. Well, yes, they are, and it's awful, and particularly if your credit card isn't very robust. But having said that, people will get that money back.
Eventually, obviously with that, because the obligation does fall upon the airlines, as you say.
Yes, it's sort of slightly misleading then, because I'm just trying to piece together exactly what you've said. And all the front pages this morning: flights hell, families thousands of pounds out of pocket, no compo for stranded passengers, and this one, not a penny to compensate air chaos victims. But you're saying they won't get a big payout, but they will get refunds of airline tickets, overnight stays and food.
Exactly right, Isabel. Yeah, it's one of these things where if the airline cancels and it's their fault, you are automatically in line for a payment between £220 and £520. Clearly isn't their fault. Therefore, they are still obliged to give you the money back that you are spending in order to stay there because your flight isn't going, but you're not going to get compensation on top. Recompense, getting your money back, and compensation are two completely separate things.
Simon, we can all envisage what people are going through at the moment. Are you saying calm down, because there's no point trying to phone an airline? No one's going to answer the phones. They're not going to have them manned properly. There's no point sending an email because there's not going to be enough staff to answer them. The money will come your way eventually. You're going to have to take a hit on this, and then when you get home, try and sort it out after that.
Effectively, that is the score, yes. I mean, the airlines, the big airlines have online systems, and you can, if you can work through the system, you get to the point where it says, right, are you trying to claim back expenses? Then you upload all your receipts. And by the way, don't just keep the receipts, make sure the receipts are itemized. Otherwise, if you've got a sum of €50 from a lovely Greek taverna, the airline will say, well, how come we don't know that you didn't have a beer or a bottle of lovely Retsina while you were there? We're not paying that. So you've got to have itemized receipts. Of course, keep all the hotel receipts. If you are buying a new flight because your airline can't get you home for a week, then you're going to need to include that. But the airlines, as long as you're reasonable, will not be able to defend these costs. And of course, if you happen to land in Gatwick on one of these rescue flights and you're trying to get to Edinburgh, the airline is going to have to pay for that. Although some of the train companies are coming in and saying, if you're in that position, we'll give you a free ride.
Very good of them. You said a moment ago between 220, was it, and 550 in compensation. Is that per night? I mean, that 550 doesn't sound an awful lot if your flight is delayed for a week.
Sorry, I was just, forgive me, I hope I haven't confused things still further. Those are the cash compensation amounts you get if the airline is responsible. Some airlines are trying to say, oh, you don't spend too much, we're not going to pay you more than £150 for a hotel. They cannot do that. They can't limit it. If the only hotel in town is £300 and you've got to stay there, then you send them the bill, and they can't say, "Oh, that's too much. You should have got something cheaper." You have to be reasonable and go for the a decent budget hotel. But if there's none available, then you're just going to have to pay what it takes. And they ultimately, anyway, are supposed to be finding hotels for people. And the fact that they're not doing that makes it very difficult for them to say, "Oh no, we're not paying that out." So just go for that, and there will be, I think, a lot of support from the Civil Aviation Authority, government ministers, to persuade the airlines to do this. Of course, the airlines are furious. This meltdown, I calculate so far, costing them £80 million. And that's a loss for them, not for everybody else.
Simon, I'm not trying to oversimplify this, and I'm not trying to put pressure on travel agents or beatify them in any way, but would you be in a more reassured position, a more comfortable position, if you have a travel agent on your side doing a lot of the spade work on this?
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, if you've got a good human travel agent, he or she will help you through the process, and obviously will work with you to try to get what you're due. And people who are on a proper package holiday run by a company such as TUI or Jet2 are going to find that they're in a pretty strong position as well. And they are probably the people who are being looked after properly while they're waiting to come back. So they hopefully won't even have to spend out any money at all.
OK, Simon.
I was going to say, thank goodness you're here to explain, because it is a confusing picture. And if we're confused, having read the papers, dread to think what passengers are thinking, trying to make of it. All of them on a lack of sleep as well. Always good to talk to you, Simon Calder. Thanks very much indeed. And we were saying earlier when we spoke to somebody, I think they were stuck in Turkey, weren't they? Yeah. It's a bit of a blessing, really, to be stuck there for a few extra days. But it takes me back to a few Christmases ago. Do you remember there was terrible snow all through the build-up to Christmas?
And everything closed down.
And families were trying to get home for Christmas and staying in the airport and missing the day. And there are so many people who were trying to get to events, missing them.
Hard. That was the film. That was exactly what was happening in Die Hard.
There's lots of films reenacted. There's Home Alone. A woman yesterday talking about not being able to get home to her baby. So if you're one of those people, we want to talk about those stories as well this morning. What are you missing whilst you wait?
Here's my take on things. That I would just be saying to everybody around me, calm down. There's no point joining that queue, which is 10 miles long. We're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to get anything. We've got to suck this up, take a hit on this. And I know that's going to be very difficult for a lot of people, but there's no point worrying about it. Sort yourself out, at the end that you are, whether you're in Spain, Portugal, wherever you are, and then get all your ducks in a row and hit your airline, whatever, when you come back.
Yeah.
Because the service, I don't care who the airline is, the service is appalling with all of them. They're not interested in you. They want the money out of you. You try and change your ticket. Somebody dies in your family, they're not interested. Some awful thing happens and you've got to change your circumstances. No, just pay us another 300 quid and you can have what you want, but otherwise, no. They are not interested. They want to suck the money out of you and they want to keep it. They don't want to give it back to you. They don't have staff to answer the queries and the calls. It's an appalling situation, but we put up with it. We still go to the serial offenders on this, the ones that don't care about their passengers because you can get the odd £60 flight or whatever. I've never had it. Have you ever had a cheap flight?
Probably.
No, you would remember if you had a 35 quid flight or 65 quid flight.
But I was just thinking,
you try and fly to Glasgow, you try and fly to Belfast or whatever, 250 quid, it'll be one way. You know, it is absolutely appalling. But yet you could fly to Ipanema or whatever for 25 quid. It just is appalling.
But, you know, I don't have much sympathy for the airlines. I totally agree with what you're saying. But Simon Calder just saying that this has cost them so far £80 million. This wasn't their error. And they're getting abuse left, right and centre.
No, but
and having
it wasn't their error, but it shows that they have no system to relate to the people that use their service.
True, when things go wrong. But the trouble is when the airlines go 80 million quid down on a hit like this, they raise costs further down the line in some other way to recoup it. And it just makes air travel worse for everyone, less enjoyable. It's a disaster. It's a disaster for the airline. It's a disaster for the passengers.
Air travel is not enjoyable.
It's not anymore.
That's the whole thing.
Anymore.
Too many people crammed in. Seats are too small. You got to pay. It's just the thing that always gets me when you sit there in an airline.
Get it off your chest.
No, we'll get it off my chest. It's one of my pet projects, one of my pet subjects, so it is. And so you sit on an airline and you're sitting like this, right? So you're sitting, you've the person this side of you, person that side of you, and then you say, could I have a cup of tea and a custard cream, please? Thank you, whatever. And you get that, and they go £7.80 or whatever, and you go, right, we don't take cash, right? We take card. And you have to get, where have I put my cards? Where have I got this out of, whatever it is?
The worst is if you're flying to, say you're flying to Amsterdam, by the time you've got there, they haven't had a chance to get down the aisle with the tea trolley.
That's right.
And then there's outrage.
There's outrage with all of that. But you get nothing for nothing nowadays, and it's, well, this is... And I say, I was watching a nice documentary last night about... Well, you know,
No, please.
I was watching a nice documentary last night about cabin crew on Loganair.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting. Loganair's a Scottish airline, and it operates the Scottish Islands, Glasgow, into Ireland and that sort of thing. And it talks about the romance between the crew, the cabin crews. Apparently, if you're a pilot, male or female, it's very attractive to cabin crew. And they all get friendly and they socialise together and whatever. And it's a hard job. It's a tough job and they're not just there to give you tea and biscuits and that sort of thing as well. They do a lot of hard work.
And everything else.
So credit to cabin crew, just want to say that.
In your documentary, Loving, did you watch Airline back in the day?
Yes.
It was a big show. Wow. Do you guys remember Jane Bolton? She was the star of the show. We've got her on the programme just after 9
Just after 9 o'clock today. So if she was still working, if she was still with EasyJet, how would she handle the irateness that will come, understandably, from a lot of you stranded? OK, let's get an update on the situation here at the UK's biggest airport, which is...
Heathrow, and Theo Jacumba's there for us this morning. Lots of talk about Gatwick with all the repatriation flights, but give us an update on where you are.
Well, a very good morning to you both from Heathrow Airport this morning. As you can probably hear and see behind me, flight is just leaving. But on Monday, we saw those pictures of the flight radars. Many of the flights here and across various airports in the UK were at a standstill following the fallout of this glitch which affected the system. Now, here at Heathrow, a spokesperson has told us schedules continue to be affected following the situation that occurred on Monday, and they also say while the majority of passengers will still be able to travel, there will unfortunately be some disruption on some routes, including flight cancellations as well. Hundreds of flights have been affected, and many more passengers who have travelled across Europe and different parts of the world, and many of those who and others who are in the UK as well attempting to return back home. It's been a bit of an inconvenience for some people who are stuck abroad trying to get back, whether they've got work, children needing to prepare to go back to school, and others who are still abroad trying to return back. Some are making the most of it, but for others it's been an inconvenience. But this is something Heathrow say they're putting all their staff into and ensuring that this situation can be solved in the next few days, and helping the passengers that are still here as well trying to get abroad.
Is Theo, if you are flying today, it's a lovely day for it by the looks of around you at Heathrow there today, whatever. Thank you for bringing us that report. Really appreciate it.
Gorgeous morning.
Yeah.
And actually, there was a stunning moon as we were driving in the darkness this morning. It was kind of biblical, guiding my way up the motorway. We'll be talking about the supermoon, the blue rare supermoon, which is going to be best actually tonight, and what that means. And also that links into the story we've been talking about this morning, this hurricane in the States. They think that the tides associated with the supermoon could actually be life-threatening as a result of the hurricane. Lots to talk about there.
Most people die because of water in hurricanes, not through winds or debris or anything like that. But are you sure it was a blue moon?
Was it? I'm not sure, but a rare blue supermoon is what I wrote down.
A blue supermoon. Very Manchester City. Very that. They'll start singing that song or whatever. OK, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
The Foreign Secretary has touched down in China overnight, becoming the first to visit the country in over 5 years. The trip, which will include bilateral meetings with the Chinese counterpart, has come under criticism from MPs as being akin to appeasement.
A hero police officer who was hit by a train while trying to save a man on the tracks has died. Not sure police have confirmed 46-year-old was taken to Queen's Medical Centre and died yesterday with his family at his side. Flags across the force will now be flown at half-mast as a mark of respect.
And as we were discussing, officials in Florida are warning of potential death and catastrophic devastation as the state prepares for Hurricane Idalia. The Category 4 storm's due to hit the state's west coast this morning, and authorities are calling on residents to evacuate immediately.
Let's get more now on the Foreign Secretary's trip to China. We go to Cindy Yu, who's assistant editor at The Spectator, for this now. Is this... Well, how would you sum up? What's your feeling as a Chinese exile? What is your feeling towards the Foreign Secretary visiting your homeland?
Oh, well, I'm not exiled from China, Eamonn. I've actually managed to go to China last month to see my family. We've just immigrated. But, I think that the Foreign Secretary, this is going to be a massive challenge because he's going to have to walk on a tightrope, a diplomatic tightrope on this trip. On the one hand, he has to please or at least be respectful enough to the Chinese that it might unlock some of the wins that the British side are hoping for, such as Rishi Sunak meeting Xi Jinping at the G20 next week. There are other concerns over Ukraine, whether or not China can play a more active role in ending the conflict. All of these things that the UK wants China's cooperation on. On the other hand, cleverly can't look too pleased to be in Beijing and to look like he's appeasing Beijing, because that would only make the voices back home who are critical even more loud. So he's got a bit of a balancing act to seem respectful and firm, but also raise these human rights concerns in a dignified way. And so far from that picture, I noticed that picture he had with Han Zhen, he wasn't smiling. It is interesting how I think some of this will just come down to optics.
It's been 5 years since the Foreign Secretary has gone to China. What's changed? Are we just following America's lead in this?
Yeah. 5 years has actually been quite a long time. Isabel, if you remember last time when Jeremy Hunt went back, that was the time he accidentally called his Chinese wife Japanese in front of the Chinese foreign minister, so quite a gaffe there. But at that point, Jeremy Hunt even said he was going to double down on the golden era. This golden era being the idea by George Osborne and David Cameron of being China's best friend in the West. That term has now been properly retired from usage in British diplomatic circles. No one would be talking about that anymore. And the reason for it is because in 5 years, there have been so many different things that have worsened the British relationship with China. Hong Kong, for one, the growing knowledge about what's happening in Xinjiang, the province where the Uyghurs live. There has been the pandemic where people have questions over where exactly the virus came from, just to name a few. So it does feel like a completely different world. But Cleverly is going this week because a host of different Western nations have gone, including the Americans. So the Americans have sent first Antony Blinken, the National Security Advisor, then Janet Yellen, their Treasury Advisor, then John Kerry, the climate change envoy, just in the last few months alone. It would be odd, I think, if the British were not to go at all.
And I suppose there's stuff to be gained from a Chinese perspective in all of this. They've got a sort of declining economy at the moment, huge problem with youth unemployment, housing market crashing, currency crashing. They need partners in the West.
Yeah, they absolutely do. They absolutely do. That's why they were so keen to meet the French and the Germans early in the year. Chinese trade with the EU and the US are something like 10 times bigger than Chinese trade with Russia. So when we talk about China's loyalties, China does want to have friends in the West still. But it has been interesting that China has been keeping the UK on a bit of a back burner. I understand from Foreign Office sources that China just wouldn't confirm a date for this visit for months on end, making it quite clear, I think, that the UK is not on his priorities list. So that's why, cleverly, this time around, he needs to at once charm the Chinese without seeming like he's appeasing them.
He's actually just tweeted in the last second, I just want to read it out. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly has said, engaging with China doesn't mean that we shy away from the tough conversations. It's about voicing our concerns directly face to face. That's why I'm here.
Well, I'd love to see those recorded. I'd love to see how tough he's going to get. We could have £1 billion trade deal, but I'm going to get tough with you. Oh, actually, no, I don't think I will.
Eamon, I was just reading Charles Moore's biography of Margaret Thatcher yesterday, and what the Chinese really respected in Thatcher was that she was tough talking in private, but never briefed afterwards to the press. Whereas the opposite is the leaders that they don't like, where they're really sycophantic in private, but then brief out afterwards to the press that they were really tough. They don't respect that at all, because that's not what they were like, because that's not what the leaders were like in private conversations with them. So they really respected Mrs. Thatcher for being tough in private, but not briefing out as if she was tough. She was just doing it because that's who she was.
Interesting, Cindy. Thanks for that insight. Really appreciate your take. We'll leave it there. Thank you.
It's been 24 hours now since the expansion of the ultra-low emission zone, with Sadiq Khan's scheme being met with protest and anger.
We've taken a look at what is really causing pollution in London. Lisa Hartle with this report.
The ultra-low emission zone and clean air zones have been introduced in London and other cities to tackle air pollution. One of the main pollutants is PM 2.5, particulate matter far smaller than a grain of sand that can enter our bloodstream when we breathe them in. The World Health Organization has a target to reduce the annual level of this pollution to 5 micrograms per cubic metre of air. In 2022, London had an average concentration of 9.6. The government's current target is 10.
In London, when you look at the emissions within London, there are 2 major contributors. One is the motor vehicle, and the second is combustion of wood.
Independent air quality scientist Michael Bull explained to me how these levels differ drastically throughout the day. We looked on a website called London Air to see the levels of PM 2.5 in South London's Bromley over a week.
So currently, PM 2.5 is at about 6, actually. That's an hourly average. Okay. And if you just look at the way that graph's moving, so you could look on this day and things would look very bad. So just by going and looking on one particular instance in time, you have no idea whether you're compliant, because this week you could have gone and measured 6, or you could have gone and measured 20.
So because the levels fluctuate so much, you have to take the annual level for PM 2.5 in Bromley, which is 10.
The ULEZ in Bromley is not just aimed at achieving it in Bromley, it's aimed at improving it across London, because as the air comes in from Bromley, it will pick up more. It's this point, as the air moves across London, it picks up the pollution. And so improving it in Bromley, Bromley might comply, but it will help the centre of London comply by doing it in Bromley as well.
So what impact is the air quality having on people physically?
So in the long term, the effects are things like an increased risk of cancer, particularly lung cancer. It's estimated that 1 in 10 lung cancers in London are caused by air pollution. They're the effects on the lungs, so chronic lung diseases like COPD and asthma, but also things that people might not be aware of. So there's an increased risk of things like dementia, strokes, heart attacks. And then what we see when there are very high levels that are kind of outside of the normal levels of toxic air is that there's an increase in the number of people admitted to hospital with heart attacks, with breathing attacks, and with strokes. And that's been replicated again and again in different cities across the world.
The Mayor of London offers a scrappage scheme to people with vehicles that don't meet the emission standards. For Kevin, who owns a garage in South London, he says the amount offered isn't enough.
You're not going to buy a new car for £2,000. You're not going to buy a used car for £2,000 that's compatible. The prices have rocketed just because of the deadline. Me personally, I looked yesterday for a compatible vehicle, and the price from last year to this year, it's gone up like £5,000.
ULEZ is impacting many financially at a difficult time, with people only being given 9 months' notice of the expansion. But by lowering air pollution levels, the science says lives will be saved. So the question is, can we afford not to? Lisa Hartle, GB News, London.
No, Lisa, the question is, why are we doing it in the first place? Because the depressing thing about that was to learn that the second biggest polluter in London was wood burners. Now, it's something I would associate with the countryside or whatever it is, or people in a more rural atmosphere. But if you live in London, are you burning wood?
I thought they were banned in
London and big cities
areas.
and things.
Yeah.
But now, here's my point. Why are we worried about it then if we set the countryside alight? If Spain is burning down, Greece is burning down, Portugal's burning down, and it's all going to blow over in this direction, it's not going to matter darn bit of difference what we do in London. If carbon burning, if wood burning is causing so much pollution, why aren't we more concerned about the forest fires in Canada and all around the world, which are absolutely frightening? Because if they're happening, it doesn't matter what we do with our little wood burners in the corner, because the world is burning down. Have a think about it. Here's the weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So to start Wednesday, it's been a much brighter morning than it was yesterday with plenty of sunshine around. We have already seen some showers across the north and west, and elsewhere we'll start to see that cloud bubbling up, allowing some showers to develop as we go through the rest of this morning. Though we will start to see those showers peter out from the west as we head into this afternoon. Temperatures today will be similar to what we saw yesterday, so highs maybe into the low 20s, but still feeling pretty pleasant in that sunshine with those light winds. Now, as we head through the rest of this afternoon and into this evening, slowly we'll see those showers petering out from the west, so plenty of clear spells, especially across northern and eastern areas. But looking down towards the southwest, we've got clouds and outbreaks of rain moving in during the early hours of Thursday. So a warmer start there, but further north and east, a pretty chilly start to the day. So throughout Thursday, we'll slowly see this cloud and rain making its way northeastwards. Always drier and brighter across Scotland and the far northeast, but for some central parts of England and maybe the far east of East Anglia, starting to see some cloud into the afternoon. Heaviest rain will be across the far south, where we could also see the odd thunderstorm. So temperatures a little bit more muted than of late, but still getting into the high teens or just into the 20s.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Coming up, we'll be discussing the mystery of the British Museum. They've started to recover some of the stolen artefacts. We'll be asking if it's time for the institution to return some of those, like the Elgin marbles. More after this.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're going to take you straight to the live pictures coming into us from Florida of this huge hurricane predicted to go up to as high as a hurricane level 5, which
now, look at that.
Remember,
well, I mean, that is so strong. Those winds are so strong now, and they reckon around 120 miles an hour. That is like sideways rain that you're looking at there. And you can see the seas rising. Just very, very scary to be amongst all of that.
Yeah, and also we've got this rare blue supermoon, haven't we? And they're saying that actually it could worsen the life-threatening tides that are being triggered by this particular hurricane. So just what you don't need is a rare blue supermoon in the middle of the worst hurricane in possibly almost 20 years. So our thoughts are with the people of Florida. President Biden has approved an emergency declaration. I think Ron DeSantis, he's the governor, saying time is running out to evacuate. Yeah. It's not even just Florida either. North and South Carolina also being affected.
You're faced with that situation. Where do you go? You're told to evacuate. Evacuate to where? But as the governor has pointed out, now time is running out in that situation. Have you ever been caught abroad in a storm?
Yes, funnily enough. Well, I was in the air when it was happening. I was on holiday with my mum, and we were going to Madeira for the weekend, and we were trying to land, and this huge storm hit. We couldn't land. There were landslides. People died. British people died. And we were then taken to Tenerife and had to stay the night there. But it was frightening. It was really, really frightening.
I remember being caught in a hotel with my family in Cyprus. And it was so bad, the winds were so bad, and debris was being thrown about that the windows were smashing in the hotel, you know, in the lounge and reception downstairs and things. And you talk about plate glass breaking. And I brought my family to a room that was in the inner sanctum of the hotel. It was an office, like, I didn't even ask anybody. I just went in there, and there were no windows around it.
Perfect.
And, you know, my son is 21 now. He was very young then, very, very young. And it was very frightening. And that's when, as a parent, you've got to pretend you're not frightened, and you're not worried about what goes on. So our thoughts go to anybody who's caught up in Hurricane Idalia. Anyway, right, still to come on the programme this morning. After India's successful moon mission, NASA has suggested humans could be living on the moon's surface before 2030.
Yeah, we're not talking, you know, prefabs here. We're talking about, you know, sort of a satellite space station, but on moon territory. I was imagining, you know, street lamps and cars, but apparently that's not the case. 8:10, an astrophysicist will tell us exactly how it will all work.
And is it even possible? As the government scraps water pollution restrictions for buildings in a bid to build more homes. At 8:20, we'll ask if we should overlook environmental concerns to solve the housing crisis. Environment before practicality. Let us know, and would we ever even solve the housing crisis? Your views welcome on that as well. GB Views at gbnews.com, or you can tweet at GBNews.
Now, the British Museum has begun the recovery of some of the 2,000 items that were earlier reported stolen.
It comes as China calls for items to be returned that it says were looted. So we're asking today, is it time for museums in this country to return invaluable items back to their home nations, or should they remain here with us? Joining us to debate this, the broadcaster and historian Rafe Heidel-Mancu, who says no, they should not be returned.
As well as the archaeologist and former Minister of State for Antiquities Affairs of Egypt, Dr. Zahi Hawis, who says, yes, they should be returned. Good morning to you both. May I start with you, Dr. Hawis, in all of this? When you see that the British Museum has failed spectacularly to keep its antiquities, its treasures safe, does it add weight to the argument that really many of them should be returned to their original home? Can you hear us, Dr. Hawis? OK, we're going to start with you, Rafe, instead, if that's OK. The same question to you, really. Does it undermine our ability to be sort of guardians of these treasures?
No, it doesn't, and that's not to belittle what is an absolutely huge scandal at the British Museum here. And there's also a problem we have with our curators right now that also seem to be rather ashamed of their collections. But artifacts are still perfectly safe. 2,000 objects is a lot, but it's 0.025% of the 8 million items in the British Museum's collections. And we're talking about very small items here, things that could be secreted on your person. We're not talking about the Elgin marbles or the Rosetta Stone going missing. And the reality, of course, is that such thefts have happened all the time in lots of places around the world, the Middle East, Asia and Africa. It's surprising because of how respected and revered the British Museum is. But to think if these items were going to be returned to their home countries, they wouldn't be similarly at risk, especially given the high levels of corruption in those countries, is for the birds. Also, of course, we have to remember the threat from war, from terrorism and political unrest. You remember when ISIS was in Syria, the destruction of Palmyra, the ancient artifacts destroyed at the Mosul Museum. In Egypt, where my interlocutors from, of course, we had a bombing at the Cairo Museum in 2014. The El Arish Museum of Antiquities was very badly damaged in 2015. So they're still far safer and better preserved at the British Museum than in those nations calling for them to be returned home.
But they're not ours, Rafe. And Dr. Hawis, if you can hear us now, that's the main problem. Does it hurt you to see Egyptian antiquities on display elsewhere?
But first, I would like to correct what the Webster is saying about corruption. What do you mean by corruption? Corruption can happen in England, can happen in any place. But in my country, there is no corruption. Number two, there was no bombing at the Cairo Museum. There was bombing outside of the... But it is a shame from the British Museum stolen 2,000 artifacts. This shows that the British Museum is not honest to protect our monuments. And therefore, my petition that asking for the return of the Rosetta Stone, it reaches now 200,000 people. It will come to million. And we ask Rosetta Stone to come back because the British Museum is not honest enough to preserve Rosetta Stone, which is the icon of the Egyptian identity.
Rafe, do you want to respond to that?
Bias here is clear for all to see. Firstly, of course, we know full well that the Middle East and Asia and Africa have the highest levels of corruption in the world compared to Western Europe and Scandinavia and the Anglosphere. Every survey on corruption shows that.
I don't understand why do you put corruption? Why do you put corruption in this? It has nothing to do with the shame that you have in the British Museum. Don't talk about corruption. Corruption is the...
Let's move on from that, shall we? Look, the key fact here is the British and the French, particularly the French when it comes to Egypt, but the British more widely, are the people who actually rediscovered the lost history of ancient civilizations like Egypt, Asia, and Africa. It was the British and then primarily the French who translated the hieroglyphs in Egypt, without which we wouldn't be able to interpret any of the wonderful artifacts that are there. And the Rosetta Stone was key to that. You know, these aren't just items for Egypt, these are items for world heritage. I would actually think it's high time for the British Museum to have a new permanent exhibition not being defensive, but explaining to the world how Britain rediscovered these ancient civilizations, how it saved historic artifacts like the Rosetta Stone. You know how many items in Egypt were being destroyed by looters who were looking for treasures.
Well, let's hear what Dr. Howes has to say about that.
Listen, I don't understand. He's saying that in Egypt, monuments destroyed by loot. What do you mean? Nothing happened like that. I am not denying. Listen, let me finish. You are saying the British and the French did a lot for the understanding the Egyptian monument. I agree. But we are in a case now that the British Museum is not honest enough to keep our monuments there.
Yeah.
If you talk about what's happening in Egypt now, we have the Grand Museum, we have the Civilization Museum. We need the Rosetta Stone to come back because the British Museum is not honest enough to preserve it.
Yeah, and look, you can see emotions running high there.
I don't understand how you are ashamed of having 2,000 artifacts stolen from the British Museum. It's a shame.
No, I have to say, I think it is a stain.
This is corruption. This is corruption.
Certainly accept that, and I can see you feel very, very strongly about that. And Rafe Hadelman-Koo, I mean, it's harder to argue, certainly harder to argue the case, isn't it, when we have seen this happen right under the nose of the museum? Are they capable of looking after antiquities that other people say they want?
It never happened in any museum that something like this has stopped. It's nothing. Never. It can't
let Rafe respond to that, if that's okay.
2,000 artifacts. 2,000 artifacts. This is shame.
Okay.
All right. Look, the British. Let's calm things down here a bit. The British Museum is what we call an encyclopedic museum, right? Places like the Louvre, the Metropolitan Museum in New York. These are places where we have world history on display. And they put things like the Elgin marbles, like the Rosetta Stone, like the Benin bronzes into their wider global context where we can actually contrast and compare civilizations. Now, that used to be understood, but now it seems that we're reducing everything to ethnicity and nationalism. I'll be saying that, that museum should only show items that are actually that originate from the location of those actual museums. We're placing nationalism here above internationalism, which is an odd argument.
Well, it is an argument nonetheless, with however odd it is, Rafe. We've got to leave things there. Dr. Howes, it must be amazing to be you, to be an archaeologist, someone who has uncovered antiquities yourself, and I have been to your museum in Cairo. What is that feeling when you discover something from civilizations 2,000, 3,000 years ago?
It's amazing. I am working right now on the search and the excavation of the lost pyramid at Saqqara, and also for the search of the mummy of Queen Titanic. I'm excavating in the Golden City. Major important discovery. When really I discovered many statues, 25 statues in Saqqara, and I see them in a museum. They're going to be shown in the Grand Museum. Our Grand Museum is the best museum in the world. Is going to show all the new discoveries that I made in my career. And I'm really happy to see that. But I feel bad when I hear the British Museum, 2,000 artifacts are stolen. And my petition for it's a fair for Rosetta Stone to come back to Egypt, because it is the icon of Egyptian identity.
Dr. Howes, I wish we could uncover more time. We can't do that. We've got to say thank you to both of you, Rafe and Zahi. Thank you both very much indeed. We're back after the break. We've got the newspaper review.
This September, the GB News family is back together. From breakfast, right across the day, breaking the latest stories, and every evening. And don't forget the weekend. We've got the whole of the UK covered. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country, with fun, lively and intelligent conversation with the biggest guests. This September, we'll meet Chris and John. Thank you for choosing GB News. We're proud to be Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
OK, let's have some royal stories in the papers today. David Mellor has got those, and maybe some friction between Prince Charles and Prince William, or King Charles, showing who's the boss.
Yes, this is interesting because that unfortunate diseased specimen, Prince Andrew, has suddenly been allowed to travel with the king. And it was always said the king just wanted him out, period, and wanted him out of that huge house that he's got. And now he's travelling in a car with him, and it's being suggested that William has been snubbed over this because William, quite rightly, am I allowed to say, thinks that Andrew is a thoroughly bad thing for the royal family. And to bring him back, you know, Andrew's not going to change. It doesn't matter the details of these sexual activities if they existed. What matters is that Andrew is I've had personal experience of Andrew. He's a really tiresome man. And I think that he would be an asset to the royal family. He won't be.
Well, it's fascinating you saying it as it is.
You wouldn't disagree.
I wouldn't disagree. My personal experience is exactly the same. I'd call him boorish.
Can I tell you my personal experience of him? I'm getting on a plane in the Gulf, and I go to my seat, and there's something with a sort of covered over with a blanket. And then a couple of coppers come to me and tell me I'm actually sitting somewhere else. Do you know, I've always hated myself. You know, when one is faced with an ability to show that one is macho, I failed that.
Were you government minister at the time?
I was. Yeah. And I should really have said, off. And why didn't I? I wake up in the night screaming with fear and frustration. Okay. I never actually did.
But right. He's somebody, he is absolutely, because he says, I'm a royal and therefore, and his daughters are called princess. And he is the most entitled of all of them.
Literally.
Yeah. But I do have to say, we should all...
Apart from that, I think he's great, I got to tell you.
Yeah. You speak as you find. That's what I always say in life. I do find his wife delightful, his ex-wife delightful, and his children delightful as well.
But interestingly, in this story, he was actually pictured... William was driving the car.
Yeah.
Andrew was in the passenger seat and Kate was in the back. So, you know, that's quite a move by the king. Not only has he brought him into the fold, but made William drive him to church.
Yeah, so he could be photographed. So they could be...
I don't think it does the king any good. You know, the king is not Queen Elizabeth. The king has still got his own way.
But he has to keep everybody happy.
But I mean, he's not going to keep everybody happy by being nice to Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
He'll make an awful lot of people in this country deeply unhappy.
The only thing I minded about was that for the Queen's funeral, the two people who had actually risked their lives in service to the country were not allowed to wear uniforms. And then you have Princess Anne, you know, in full military uniform. And I think... I mean, I'm absolutely happy for Harry and Andrew to wear their uniforms. I am not happy for Andrew to be brought back into the fold.
OK. We've got a second royal story here, which is about Meghan, and this is in the Telegraph. Be interested in both your opinions on this.
This is an article by Lee Cohen, an American journalist, basically suggesting that, you know, that Meghan has abandoned Britain and that what a good thing that is for us. And I agree with him.
And he also says, we Americans aren't so lucky.
Yes, because the extraordinary thing is there's the vaulting ambition of this woman who, aside from marrying Harry, for however long that lasts, hasn't really been one of the highest possible achievers. And yet, there she is, first of all, wanting to be Princess Diana, but finding that was all a bit too much of a problem. So she's now abandoned the UK and she thinks she can be president of the United States. I mean, what is it with this woman? Is it a mental illness or what?
Actually, why don't we look where the real problem is the media. Every single thing that Meghan does, we read about in the newspapers. I mean, we could ignore her. We don't have to have her.
But she won't accept being
it's
ignored.
Completely...
She thrusts herself forward.
No. And she was a perfectly successful actress, whether you think or not, but more successful than most actresses. And actually, she then did fall in love with Prince Harry. But I think if we, you know, all these newspapers who hate her, all these newspapers who hate her could ignore her, and they don't.
There's another story, and their relationship is often questioned, and it suggests that Prince Harry, and you've got 20 seconds to tell me this, could get over a divorce with her easier at his age than he would if he was my age, for instance.
Actually, I think it's the opposite, is that he would get over it more quickly if he was older, because older men marry people over 60, people who are slightly older than you, Eamonn. When their wives leave them, or they leave their wives, they marry very fast.
Whereas women decide they don't need another person.
Well, absolutely. Women think enough is enough. Let's have a good time alone.
Now, here's the forecast.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So to start Wednesday, it's been a much brighter morning than it was yesterday with plenty of sunshine around. We have already seen some showers across the north and west, and elsewhere we'll start to see that cloud bubbling up, allowing some showers to develop as we go through the rest of this morning. Though we will start to see those showers peter out from the west as we head into this afternoon. Temperatures today will be similar to what we saw yesterday, so highs maybe into the low 20s, but still feeling pretty pleasant in that sunshine with those light winds. Now, as we head through the rest of this afternoon and into this evening, slowly we'll see those showers petering out from the west, so plenty of clear spells, especially across northern and eastern areas. But looking down towards the southwest, we've got clouds and outbreaks of rain moving in during the early hours of Thursday. So a warmer start there, but further north and east, a pretty chilly start to the day. So throughout Thursday, we'll slowly see this cloud and rain making its way northeastwards, Always drier and brighter across Scotland and the far northeast, but for some central parts of England and maybe the far east of East Anglia, starting to see some cloud into the afternoon. Heaviest rain will be across the far south, where we could also see the odd thunderstorm. So temperatures a little bit more muted than of late, but still getting into the high teens or just into the 20s.
The temperature's rising.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Repatriation flights begin amid warnings travellers hit by airline chaos could be denied compensation.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Wednesday, the 30th of August. Thanks for your company. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading for us this morning, thousands of British passengers could be denied compensation due to the crisis being beyond governmental control. Repatriation flights will, however, be taking off from Gatwick this morning as some travellers face 10 days to get home.
It comes as the Chief Executive of National Air Traffic Services says he's not ruling anything out as the cause of the meltdown, but that an initial investigation suggested it was due to misfiled flight data.
Sadiq Khan says he's sorry to those whose businesses have been hit by ULEZ. Speaking to GB News, he said the government has let people down and that bold action needs to be taken.
The Foreign Secretary will challenge China over its support of Russia in the Ukraine war on a visit to Beijing today. MPs have hit out at the trip, with the former Conservative leader Ian Duncan-Smith comparing it to appeasement.
And the latest forecast today comes from Rachel Ayres.
It's a bright but chilly start to the day for many, but what does the rest of the day have in store and the rest of August? Join me later to find out more.
Bringing you up to date with what is happening with these repatriation flights, and we hear that EasyJet out of Gatwick will begin operating those flights this morning as the fallout from the air traffic control meltdown continues.
Yeah, hundreds of more flights were cancelled yesterday, with an estimated 250,000 passengers stranded in total.
Travellers face the threat of being denied compensation due to the disruption being beyond airline control.
Well, Lucy Thatcher was due to fly to Barcelona for a girls' trip but had it cancelled, and she joins us this morning. And we also have Laura Sanders, who's a travel expert. Lucy, good morning to you. So disappointing few days.
Yeah, it's been a bit frustrating.
Tell us your story. What happened? When were you supposed to be leaving?
Yeah, so we were meant to be flying off at 6 a.m. yesterday morning. Woke up at 3 a.m. to a text to say your flight's been cancelled. We obviously didn't know what to do, so we headed to the airport, and the guy was like, there's no point trying to get in there or do anything. Go home and try and find another flight. But on the EasyJet system, there are no new flights to Barcelona, and we've got a connecting flight from Barcelona to Ibiza tomorrow lunchtime. So we had no way of getting to Ibiza to get that next flight. So we've had to try and find another one for this evening, but who knows if that will still go itself.
Gosh, and at least you're at home whilst you try to sort all of this out. But it's meant lots of stress, I presume, and costs being incurred. I mean, what about the accommodation that you had booked in Barcelona for the overnights?
Well, we booked a hotel for 2 days, and obviously that's not been able to be used when we can't get in contact with anyone to get compensation for that. I mean, I've tried to call EasyJet so many times, but they end the call on you like you can't even speak to a human. It's just a robot, which is incredibly frustrating. But I've written down everything that we've lost in terms of money-wise, to then hopefully once we go to Ibiza and come back, fingers crossed, that we can then sort of get on to EasyJet and say, can we have some compensation, please?
Yeah. Laura, good morning to you. I don't know about you, but I get to the stage now where I used to be, any flight was a good flight, which you got off safely, which landed. Now I think any trip's a good trip that doesn't involve disruption.
That's absolutely right. You'd think after the pandemic, after strikes last year, these airlines would have gotten used to, organising chaos, and it's just not the case. It's just an absolute mess out there. I'm the same. I travel quite frequently, and I just always worry as I'm going to the airport, is this flight going to go ahead? Because we've had so much disruption. Success now is if the flight just runs on time or runs at all.
The airline's obviously expected, and they have a duty of care to all of those being affected, to provide accommodation and food and a return flight as quickly as they possibly can. We're being told that's costing them around £80 million so far. And I suppose wherever a cost is incurred by the airline, that has a knock-on further down the road for customers.
Absolutely, yes. So you're right there in saying that airlines do have a duty of care. So if you're delayed after 2 hours for a short haul flight, after 3 hours for a medium haul, or after 4 hours for a long haul, they have to provide you with food and drinks, with accommodation if you're having to stay overnight, airport transfers, and access to communication, so phone calls, etc. It doesn't seem fair, as you were saying earlier. This is not the airline's fault. It's an extenuating circumstance, but that is the law. They do have to provide you with that assistance.
But it's amazing, Lucy, that you still have the wherewithal and the energy to want to complete your girls' trip, your weekend. I don't know, I might have just given up by now.
Well, we've got quite a few things booked in Ibiza, so the idea of losing all that money as well is if we can get there, we're happy to miss out on the Barcelona part of the holiday and then do the second part, but still, we don't know if we'll be able to get on a flight this evening and get over to Ibiza. What
have you got booked? Tell us a little bit about what you might potentially be missing and how long you've been saving up and looking forward to it, and who are you travelling with?
Yeah, so we've booked it a couple of months ago. It's for some friends that my best friends in Manchester who I've met through the gym. And we've all just finished our placements year. So before we're going back to uni, we thought we'd have like a nice girls' holiday. And we've got things like nights out booked. I think we're seeing David Guetta on Friday night. And then we've got beach clubs, like trips to Ibiza Old Town and like cute brunch dates and stuff like that. But, it would be lovely to go still, but it's so uncertain whether we're getting on that plane this evening.
What airport were you due to fly out from?
Manchester Airport.
Oh, have bad news for you. Manchester's named as one of the worst airports in the whole country. So it is. I'm just looking at a survey here which lists the good and the bad, and Manchester's does not feature well at all in the good. Okay. So
it was very chaotic at 4 a.m. yesterday morning. So
pretty chaotic. Laura, any words of advice to leave us with?
Yeah, Lucy, it's such a shame to hear what's happening to your holiday. Can I ask, did you book a package holiday or have you booked it all individually yourself?
Well, we booked it all individually because we were sort of trying to do it to save as much money as possible. And that's why we booked our internal flight from Barcelona to Ibiza, because that was only like £14 each. But obviously that's now going to not be used. And yeah, it sort of kind of backfired on us, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I would say is anybody out there who's booked a package holiday, they do have this extra bit of protection. So like what's happened to Lucy, if the flight's cancelled, if they're missing part of their holiday, then they have the protection of the package holiday regulations. And if that flight's cancelled, if you miss your holiday, then the package holiday provider can refund you for the flights, for the accommodation, for everything you've booked, basically. If you've booked it all yourself, it's not as simple, unfortunately, and I think you'll need to rely on your travel insurance to claim that money back. But the key thing is to keep all receipts. You're keeping a record of anything you spent, which is good. Keep all receipts, any evidence, and take that to the travel insurance and the airline if you end up with added expenses as a result.
Lovely.
Yeah, good advice.
Thank you for that advice. Appreciate talking to both of you. Good luck, Lucy. I hope it works out for you. Laura, thanks for your input and your advice. Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Now, in the last few minutes, Prince Harry's new Netflix documentary, Heart of Invictus, has dropped on the streaming service.
Well, it follows 6 athletes. They competed in the 2022 Invictus Games. Here's the trailer.
It is here at the Invictus Games that you realise, whatever you carry, it was the springboard that propelled you to the next level.
And we can speak now to our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. There will be interest in this, undeniable interest, and he'll need that because the last series was a bit of a controversial quagmire.
Just a bit, yeah. I mean, there's a big difference with this series, and it's Prince Harry putting a spotlight on the veterans, which is what the Invictus Games is all about. Of course, really aiding with their recovery and rehabilitation once they have sustained life-changing injuries or illnesses, and it's giving them a purpose again. And I've watched the first 5 minutes because it dropped at exactly 8 o'clock this morning, and an interviewer asks Prince Harry, "Who are you? What do you do?" And he said, "On any given day, I'm a dad of 2 with 2 dogs and my husband, and I'm the founder of the Invictus Games." And I think that's all important at this point. He has no mention at all that he is, of course, the prince and 5th in line to the throne, which I think is quite telling because it is such a contrast to what we saw last January, where Harry and Meghan did a big 6-part series complaining about the royal family. So it's kind of having the old Prince Harry back, in a sense.
Well, this is the side to Harry we all love, isn't it? I mean, Invictus Games has been such a wonderful legacy and, it has such a big trajectory, I think. It could be such a successful idea, and if it continues in the same sort of way it's going.
Yeah, and it has been already. Yeah. It started in 2014. It's done London, Orlando, Toronto, Sydney, The Hague. And then, of course, we're only a few weeks away from Düsseldorf in Germany, where Harry and Meghan are expected to attend. Of course, Prince Harry's going to be there, we think, for the entire thing. Meghan, not so much. There was a camera crew following the 2 of them in The Hague last year, which is what this series, which has dropped on Netflix today, is building up to. It's kind of the 9 months building up to the game of Düsseldorf, and it follows 6 people from around the world. And you saw a part of the trailer there. It was very much, although, of course, Prince Harry was speaking to them, it was very much focused on those veterans rather than him himself. And I think that's why perhaps William and Catherine, for example, are so popular with the British public, because the spotlight is focused on their charity work rather than themselves and their personal problems.
I think we just saw a picture of Prince Harry dropping into a screening, a surprise arrival, and it's all over my social media this morning, and it was for veterans themselves, seeing his show ahead of time, and they didn't know he was coming, and he was doing selfies, there you go, with lots of the people who attended. So he does still command a crowd.
Yeah, he certainly does. And I think also you can see there he's happy to talk to anybody and he's happy to give surprises. This premiere for the Invictus Games documentary happens in Los Angeles in America, and Prince Harry, as you said, drops by, perhaps a bit of promotion, but of course he is happy to talk to everyone and be there with the veterans.
Do you think that him appearing without Meghan actually helps to rehabilitate his image a bit for us?
Well, I think perhaps we have to remember that, of course, Prince Harry serves 2 tours of Afghanistan himself. He is a veteran. He knows what these people have gone through. And I think it's quite telling that although Meghan was filmed as part of this documentary, I haven't seen yet if she is in the documentary, but she wasn't in the trailer. She's also not going to be at the opening ceremony for the Invictus Games in a couple of weeks. I'm told by their spokesperson that she's going to be coming a bit later. And we haven't really seen Harry and Meghan together for a while. Meghan, of course, has signed up with a very prestigious Hollywood agency in the last couple of months. Prince Harry has his project here with the Invictus Games. There's rumours and reports that he's filming something separately in Africa as well for Netflix. So professionally, they seem to be doing separate projects at the moment.
OK.
Thank you very much indeed, Cameron.
Thank you.
The time is 12 minutes past 8 o'clock. We'll bring you up to date with what else is happening news-wise. And a hero police officer who was hit by a train while trying to save a man on the tracks has died. Nottinghamshire Police confirmed that Sergeant Graham Saville was taken to Queen's Medical Centre and died yesterday with his family at his side. Flags across the force will be flown at half-mast as a mark of respect.
House and flat sales in the UK are set to hit its lowest in a decade, according to a leading property website. Zooplor's monthly house price index found that property sales have so far reduced by a third compared to 2022.
Live pictures coming in from Florida now. Officials are warning of potential death and catastrophic devastation. That's how they're terming it. The state is preparing for Hurricane Idalia. Category 4, this one, due to hit the state's west coast any time now. Authorities calling on residents to evacuate immediately.
We had 2 live cameras there, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we just heard one of them was blown out of position, not surprisingly, with that sort of thing. Living on the moon. Is it a dream or could it be a reality? It could happen sooner than you think, apparently.
And with India landing a craft near to its south pole and our technology constantly advancing, humans could make camp on the lunar surface before the end of 2030, which seems incredibly soon. This is a claim from NASA.
So we're talking about, what, 7 years?
Yeah.
7 years from now. Let's find out how far-fetched that is. Dr. Maggie Liu is an astrophysicist at the University of Nottingham. 7 years. What do you think?
I think it's highly realistic.
Really?
Well, last year we saw Artemis 1 go around testing the technology of spacecraft, and that's going to be... They had dummies on board, like testing like human kind of bodily functions and stuff to make sure can they survive such a trip. And that went really well. 2024 is just around the corner. Artemis 2 will be launched, where they'll be sending the first woman and the first person of colour to orbit the moon.
Who's behind Artemis? Who's behind?
So Artemis is mostly NASA, but with support from various countries like the European Space Agency and others, but also support from private industrial companies. And this was something that Jim Brindestein, the previous administrator of NASA, brought in, and I think it was just this fabulous thing that has accelerated the advancement of space, because it's brought this kind of nice competition between industry, where they can afford to have high-risk missions go up, try things over and over again, whereas governmental companies like NASA, they'll be very, very careful. Has to be 100% safe before they'll even try to launch anything.
But when we talk about living on the moon in 7 years, we're not talking about, you know, your 2.4 house with the dog and street lamps and all the rest of it. We're talking about basically astronauts in spacesuits, but perhaps with a building that's been attached to the lunar surface, and it won't look like something that probably we would fancy living in.
Yes, absolutely. So the International Space Station is now where we send our astronauts, and we've had long durations, permanent residency up there. There's always been people on the ISS for many years now. That's coming to an end soon, and NASA and ESA and other governmental bodies are building the Lunar Gateway, which will be the equivalent of an International Space Station around the moon. And that will be the gateway to the moon and beyond. You'll use it like a lift to get down onto the lunar surface. And when astronauts go there, we hope that they will be able to do long duration missions like they do to the ISS. You'll spend several months there doing research. But obviously you'd be contained within a habitat. You need to have a spacesuit because the temperatures are super extreme there. They vary hugely from day to night. Obviously, there's no atmosphere, so there's no oxygen. There's nothing protecting you from the radiation up there. The dust is incredibly harsh.
You're painting a very attractive picture here, which brings me, Doctor, to why do we want to go there? Why would we need to go there? And, you know, at a time when it seems to be every country in the world, except Saudi Arabia, is broke, you know, why spend money on things like this?
Because space drives a lot of the technology that we have today. Things like our mobile phones, our communication systems.
Teflon.
Even things like, like our Teflon, our memory foam mattresses. These were all developed for space missions. And by going to the moon and going beyond, we can develop the technologies to enhance the life here on Earth, help us make better filtration systems, better health systems, help to understand our human bodies better. Would we fare off better in microgravity?
Could I ask you a political question here? The space race in the 60s was prompted by a race between America and Russia to get to the moon. Are we now all interested in this because India has been there, China is showing interest
Russia just failed.
in it? And Russia's just failed,
So the Soviet Union's already sent spacecraft to the moon previously. China has sent rovers to the moon successfully, and now India's become the fourth to send a mission there. Japan's been trying. A couple of months ago, they tried with a private company called iSpace. Unfortunately, that failed, but they're not giving up, trying again next year.
So is the fear being left out? I mean, does the West...
I think now we're in a stage where we have the technology to go there, and people are realising the resources that the moon has to offer, especially in getting out further out. We know that there is water ice on the moon, and water is essential for us.
Life.
Essential for life. We need it to drink. You can break it down to hydrogen and oxygen. So the oxygen can help us breathe. The hydrogen can be used in liquid propellants to get your spacecraft further out into the solar system.
Right, all of this that we're talking about is happening on the eve of a rare blue supermoon. We all know the phrase, once in a blue moon. Just explain the importance, because, I mean, it's still the same moon, whether or not it's huge in the sky or not, but it has a big impact, this supermoon, not least on what we're seeing, and we're just showing pictures of in Florida and the west coast of America with this hurricane.
This is, actually a huge misconception. I know we say, rare blue moon, but actually blue moons happen all the time. And it's nothing spectacular. A blue moon is the second full moon in a month. So we had one on the 1st of August, and now we'll have one, I think, today. So if it happens twice a month, that's a blue moon. So it happens all the time. But we do know that the moon's orbit, and when we do have a full moon, it does affect our tides, right? So it's not peculiar that it would affect the oceans and stuff like that. But I don't think it has a direct impact on hurricanes and other things.
Let me put the Bond villain side to all of this. Weaponising the moon, mean, strategically, there's got to be an advantage for some world superpower to be positioned strategically on the moon, in terms of, there was the old, during Ronald Reagan's time in America and Gorbachev, there was the Star Wars talk then. Being based on the moon could give a strategical advantage, couldn't it, to domination?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the reasons that China is particularly interested in the moon is that they realise that there's a huge resource of helium-3. This is a very rare element that you don't find often here on Earth, but it's something that is used in fusion reactors.
Right.
So it would have a huge impact on the energy sector, being able to mine that.
Gosh. Dr. Maggie Lou, fascinating talking to you and the work that you obviously do as an astrophysicist there at the University of Nottingham. And thank you very much indeed for your take and your explanation.
Thank you.
You've got to leave it there. Thank you.
Just had an email in from Tony in Norwich. He says, beware living on the moon. Does no one remember what happened on the Jerry Anderson TV series Space, 1999?
Yeah, but in 1999... The technology that they would have shown that we would have had on the moon, but then obviously never came to pass. So that's what, 23 years ago or so. But yeah, I'd worry more about Mars and Jerry Anderson's Captain Scarlet. Remember, we are the Mysterons. We know you can hear us, Earthman. We have the power to control you. Oh.
Well, yeah, that's how you've memorised
the voice was like that. So what happened? The Mysterons took over your body, and
good.
you see, so you then became this awful thing. Oh. The leader of the Mysterons on Earth was Captain Black.
It's been a life well spent.
Okay, here's your forecast. Rachel Ayres with that.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So to start Wednesday, it's been a much brighter morning than it was yesterday with plenty of sunshine around. We have already seen some showers across the north and west, and elsewhere we'll start to see that cloud bubbling up, allowing some showers to develop as we go through the rest of this morning. Though we will start to see those showers peter out from the west as we head into this afternoon. Temperatures today will be similar to what we saw yesterday, so highs maybe into the low 20s, but still feeling pretty pleasant in that sunshine with those light winds. Now, as we head through the rest of this afternoon and into this evening, slowly we'll see those showers petering out from the west, so plenty of clear spells, especially across northern and eastern areas. But looking down towards the southwest, we've got clouds and outbreaks of rain moving in during the early hours of Thursday. So a warmer start there, but further north and east, a pretty chilly start to the day. So throughout Thursday, we'll slowly see this cloud and rain making its way northeastwards. Always drier and brighter across Scotland and the far northeast, but for some central parts of England and maybe the far east of East Anglia, starting to see some cloud into the afternoon. Heaviest rain will be across the far south, where we could also see the odd thunderstorm. So temperatures a little bit more muted than of late, but still getting into the high teens or just into the 20s.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Coming up, as the government scraps water pollution restrictions for construction in a bid to build more homes, at 20 past, we'll be asking if we should overlook environmental concerns to solve Britain's housing crisis.
This September, the GB News family is back together. From breakfast, right across the day, breaking the latest stories, and every evening. And don't forget the weekend. We've got the whole of the UK covered. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country, with fun, lively and intelligent conversation with the biggest guests. This September, we'll meet Chris and John. Thank you for choosing GB News. We're proud to be Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson.
It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the live desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The government has announced plans to rip up water pollution restrictions for housing developments in a bid to try and permit more homes being built. So should we be overlooking environmental concerns in order to reach those house building targets? Let's debate this with the property expert Russell Quirk, and regular on the programme. He says, yes, sacrifices need to be made. Meanwhile, Ash Smith, who's the founder of River Windrush Against Sewage Pollution, says we should not sacrifice our environment. Let's start with you, if we can, Ash. I mean, if you were to look at our waterways already, I think the Environment Agency say 15% of them are in a good condition. Is this what they need right now? Can you hear us, Ash?
It's actually 14% or probably even less. So it's not at all necessary to do to make things worse. This is simply now a matter of maximising profit for developers who should really be seeking to be part of the solution. It's very simple. Environmental protection is not holding up house building. It's the reluctance of developers and water companies to spend on their obligations and to focus on shareholder dividends and bonuses rather than serving the public and their customers. I'm really surprised that house builders want to be associated with such a toxic idea.
Russell, what do you make of it all? Russell, do you want to respond?
So, yeah, good morning. Yes. Good morning. Yes. So this is huge overreach insofar as the environment almost trumping people of Britain's right to live in and own a home. The fact is that house building only contributes to about 5% of pollution and nitrates in rivers. I know Ash here is doing a very, very good job indeed with regard to holding the water companies to account, which are really, might I respectfully suggest, the thing that he should be focusing on, because, of course, while we're sitting here debating whether we should build houses at the expense of a tiny, tiny splash of nitrates in rivers, and also the fact that house building should come second best to the likes of the kind of welfare of newts and badgers and bats and so on. It's environmental extremism, frankly, gone too far, Isabel. We are about 100,000 homes a year short insofar as what this country needs to build for the growing population to live in. And whilst we continue with basically extremism from an environmental point of view, no wonder we end up with a broken housing market and frankly, a huge shortage, not just of houses to buy, but houses to rent, social homes and so on. There are something like 74 local authorities that are subjected
the way
to
the story
poverty.
was being relayed yesterday was that Michael Gove had ripped up these planning rules, and he said, right, now it's OK to build these houses, and the concern over these houses was, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, I hope I'm so wrong, was that basically you could pee and poo down your loo and it'll just flow straight into the river and we don't care. Have I picked that up rightly or wrongly?
Ash, you're probably more qualified to comment on this, given you're the sewage expert.
Yeah, Russell, I think a lot of what you said is hugely misinformed. All house building contributes sewage. This is the pure issue here. Every 100 houses brings about 30 tonnes of extra sewage per day, untreated. Now, that just has to be dealt with properly. So it's not a small contributor to the problem.
But that's a water company problem. That's not a house builder problem. That's a water company problem. We shouldn't not build houses because people poo and wee in them.
Yep, I absolutely agree with you. It is a water company problem, and water companies are being allowed to pollute and not do their job properly. But in this circumstance, and bearing in mind, we're only talking about in nutrient-sensitive areas in this argument with the breaking down of the law. We're not talking about most house building at all. A very tiny percentage that relates to the most sensitive and what should be the most well-protected chalk streams and estuaries and such like in our area. So if the house building industry cannot be bothered,
there are currently 74 local authorities in Britain.
Do you mind if I finish my statement?
Russell, if you just let Ash finish and we'll come to you, because we can't, especially on the radio, it's very hard to hear people speaking at the same time. Ash, just finish your point and then we'll go to Russell.
Of course, it's a great shame if for this tiny percentage, the house building industry does not want to put its hand in its pocket and pay for the mitigation that are part of the current law. It's very simple for them to just pay to have things done properly. Then that would just mean eating into those profits, and that should be a sensible way to be part of the solution, rather than to going back into some dark ages of putting money before people live in these areas where you're building these houses. Okay. Do they want to live in areas that are being wrecked by the houses that are being built?
Russell,
simply
are you surprised?
To maximise the profit.
Yeah, and are you surprised, Russell, as Ash is saying, that developers want to be associated with these sorts of projects that will be allowing these nitrates and these phosphates into our waterways, which we know are already in a really bad state?
Isabel, this is as a consequence of the people that move into these new homes, which we desperately need in Britain. So we're about 4 million homes short versus what this population
Why does it have to be mutually exclusive? Why can't you have homes and good, clean, healthy waterways?
Isabel, it's a balance. But what Ash is suggesting is that we shouldn't build homes because people that live in them cause sewage that then causes problems within the water network.
Ash, is that what you're saying?
This is why we pay the water companies a water rate, a standing charge. And this is why, sadly, and this is a debate, I guess, all on its own, the water companies are making huge, huge profits, despite the fact that they should actually be investing in their infrastructure. This is not the house builders' issue. And if we continue down this road, we're going to end up with a bigger shortage, a more broken housing market, higher house prices, and even fewer rental and social housing properties available for this growing population. It's
water
crazy.
that we can't drink.
Not lay the blame at the house builders' door.
Water that fish can't live in, that wildlife can't drink from. I hear what you're saying, Russell, that it's not a house builder's issue as such, and I take on board your logic with the water companies there who don't do enough in terms of their responsibilities. So, Ash, what would you like to see? How do you... Oh, Ash has just gone there. I was going to ask Ash really what the balance is. At the end of the day, Russell, of course, we need more houses. We absolutely need, and you know, this land is not totally green and pleasant, and there's plenty of room to build. Ash is there now. Ash, what is the solution? We know what the problem is. What is the solution that would please Russell there as well? You know we need more houses. How do we regulate them?
It's absolutely not true that environmentalists are saying don't build, and we're not saying that at all. We're saying don't build and make things worse for people. We're saying just obey your obligations. It's like saying I want to buy a car, but I'm not going to pay for the tax. I'm not going to pay for the roads. You have an obligation, and it's a simple one. And that shortage of houses that you're mentioning, caused by this particular piece of legislation, 120,000 against 4 million, it's less than 3%. And if the house building sector cannot be bothered to put its hand in its pocket, and do the right thing and do the legal thing for that amount, just to save on its bottom line, that's a very, very sad day. And I think they should be looking at the reputational damage.
Right, gentlemen, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Really good to hear from both of you, Russell and Ash.
I just want to point out the Prime Minister saying yesterday it will boost the economy £18 billion and provide tens of thousands of jobs. But Greenpeace saying, would you look at our sickly, sewage-infested rivers and conclude we need weaker pollution rules? That's what they think. What do you think? Let us know your
Well, the
thoughts.
Prime Minister thinks everything's about money. He's like an economist, you know, he just talks
about...
about...
private jet and a helicopter.
The Prime Minister knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. I would controversially suggest there. GBviews at gbnews.com. If you think he's right or wrong, as Isabel says there, get in touch and let us know here. I mean, day after day, we just talk about how we're ruining this planet, how things are going wrong.
We're going to have to live on the moon before you know it, because there'll be nothing left of it. And we do have a responsibility, stewardship.
Would you like to live on the moon?
Absolutely not.
I agree.
Yeah. I'd like my waterways to be clean, but I would also like people to be able to get houses, but maybe I'm dreaming of paradise.
I would like to be the commander of a starship, though. I do. I wouldn't like to work on a starship. I'd like to command a starship.
I wouldn't.
And, you know...
Can you imagine the international relations you'd have to manage, the egos of the Russians and the Chinese and the Indians?
But just what you've got phasers for. That's what you've got proton torpedoes for. You know, no one's going to mess with you with those, you know. Yeah. More pressure on the Spanish football boss to resign.
Can't believe he's clinging on.
He certainly is.
And his poor mother, that's all I can say.
Fancy a snog, do you? Just out of...
Save that for the break.
Just out of mutual appreciation. Back after this. What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's my favourite part of the programme.
What did you just say, 5 minutes?
12.
Oh, 12 minutes. Good, good, good. Because it is our favourite part of the programme. Yeah, it is. And we like to protect it, and a lot of people prattle on. And waste time. That was David Miller. He's up against Scarlett McGuire. They're going through the papers. And Notting Hill Carnival. Now, let me tell you about the Notting Hill Carnival.
Come here and I'll tell you.
I'll come here and tell you. It's another thing. You're not allowed to say anything bad about the Notting Hill Carnival. Are you going to say anything bad about the Notting Hill Carnival?
I'm going to say something awful about the Notting Hill.
Are you? Right, OK.
Look,
off you go.
Has anyone been to the Notting Hill Carnival on this panel besides me?
Yes, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago when I was a Home Office Minister.
It would be my
never
idea
wanted
of
to go again.
OK.
But
I just could not stand. I mean, people...
You would love it, Eamonn, let me tell you.
No.
There's lots of
my son goes...
shaking.
But all that peeing on the street and
it's literally, that happens in the small hours.
Yeah.
It's wonderful carnival.
My son goes every year. He just loves it. I mean, obviously, thousands and thousands of people love it. And David is about to say why it should be bad.
Having chosen that story, I should be allowed maybe to say something about it. But look, every picture tells a story. The front page of the Times, I don't know whether we can get that up.
Well, what we're going to show... Have we got the front page of the Times there? This is a guy wielding a zombie knife.
In full view of lots of people. Nothing is done about that. If you go then to page 7, you see a guy running along with a machete, and down below you see him threatening a man on the ground with the aforesaid machete. And the reality is that when you actually look in the story itself, officers made 275 arrests, including for sexual offences, possession of drugs, offensive weapons. The Met said 57 officers were attacked and some kicked, punched and spat at. And
besides that, everybody had a good time.
Yeah, I mean, the rate of knife attacks...
What are you saying, David, that it should be banned?
The rate of knife attacks this year is the highest since the 15 stabbings reported in 2016. I don't have any objection to people having a carnival, but I think it should be lawful, and their behaviour should be lawful. And if it gets to the point where the police say, which they are saying, they can't control the violence, well, then something's got to be done about it.
I believe the Prime Minister's going to be talking today about zombie knives. I have a feeling the police are to get new powers to seize and destroy these zombie knives, which are these machetes that have got blades on both sides. I mean, it's amazing to me that they are still...
Well, I mean, of course, they should be elite. I mean, of course they should be. They should be taken. And I do agree with David that the Notting Hill Carnival should be more lawful, but it's how you do it, which seems... I think there should be more liaison with the community groups who run it.
Because also the Times, which covers this very well, just below the pictures of this chap waving his machete, the Whitehall editor talks about the limitations on police powers to actually deal with people who have these weapons, because they are not per se illegal. But the interesting point is, knife crime is up 34% in 2010, with about 45,000 offences recorded last year. Stabbings now amount to 39% of homicides. I mean, we always assume, we get rather complacent, don't we, and say, because you can't go and buy a gun like you can in the States. Well, people don't go and buy guns, they buy knives.
Buy knives
But you can be certain that a knife is properly wielded, is every bit as life-threatening as shooting somebody.
Scarlett, we move on to The Guardian, page 7 here. Senor Rubiales, head of the Spanish FA, he hangs on.
He hangs on. I mean, this is the man who denies that he sort of took he did it on television for the world to see, that he planted a kiss on the lips of a poor Spanish woman footballer who just won the World Cup, and said it was consensual, and it was so clearly not. And instead of just apologising and said, I got, taken over by the day, he's talked about false feminism and that it's all terrible. And his mother has gone on hunger strike because she thinks that the way he's being treated is appalling. And what's interesting is that in The Times, Carol Midgley talks about the mothers of such people, and how these overindulgent mothers, and she names Margaret Thatcher's son Mark and Queen Elizabeth's son Andrew, who were brought up to be these self-entitled men who could never do anything wrong. And instead, Carol Midgley said, if I had behaved anything like that, my mother would have said, it's you. And for a mother to go, no, it couldn't possibly be him. I mean, when we all saw it.
I was brought up wrongly. My mother used to say, you're never old enough or big enough for me not to slap you. That's all she used to say. If you said, I'll slap you, that's all she used to say. So you knew your position, you knew your place, and she had 5 sons.
I'd love to have met your mother.
Yes.
You wouldn't.
I would have.
Well,
she obviously failed in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, she tried to keep him in his place, didn't she?
I'm sure it was a big job.
She was the boss. She was the boss, absolutely.
Speaking of things Northern Irish, not just your mother, but another... I was going to make an unfortunate link. Titanic, David, tell me more in the Telegraph.
This is an interesting thing, that apparently the rights to go into the Titanic and take things reposes in a company registered in Georgia. Maybe it's owned by Donald Trump, who's to say? But anyway...
Georgia, USA.
Georgia, USA.
OK.
And what they're now proposing to do is to really start more seriously, or so it's alleged, more seriously removing things from the wreckage. And so the United States authorities, there was an agreement that this should be treated as, of course, a lot of American bodies on board as well, this should be treated as if it were a grave and treated as a sacred spot. And so the United States government are now going to challenge this expedition and actually try and get people to see that they can't behave like that.
What is the difference? We had an archaeologist debating an item 20 minutes ago or so on the programme. What's the difference between that and excavating an Egyptian burial site or whatever?
A couple of thousand years.
Yeah? And that makes the difference, do you think?
Apparently. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that the Titanic is still very fresh in people's memories, even though none of us were alive when it happened.
Mm. I also think there's sort of something visceral about, here are the Americans once again trying to make money out of something. Whereas I'm not saying that the British people the British archaeologists, and there were an awful lot of them who went and unearthed Egypt's treasures and brought them back here. I'm not saying that they were any better, but there was a feeling at the time that it was all right. Whereas now we do wonder about this sort of commercial gain.
In a way, I think they were better, because what they were trying to do was to uncover a civilization and tell us about that civilization, about which nothing much was known in the 19th century. and then more became known. Here, it's grave robbing, really, isn't it? What they're proposing.
Drink driving, Scarlett.
This is a wonderful story.
Yeah.
So in Japan, they've got a driving school, which, first of all, you go round a difficult course completely sober, and then they get you to drink, and then you go round the course again.
Is that safe?
No. This is a course.
Okay.
I mean, this is
to teach you the.
This is to show you that actually, because all these people, I mean, particularly young men who go, oh, I'm a better driver when I'm drunk. I mean, we've all heard this before. Oh, a couple of pints and I'm great. And it's actually to show you what drink does to you. Yeah. And I think it's a really clever idea of saying, yeah, OK, try it for real, and let's see what happens when you've had a few.
Reaction time is.
Absolutely, reaction time. And how dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How dangerous you are when you're drunk, or when you've had anything to drink is the real thing.
OK. But funny, it just flashed into my head as Scarlett was talking there. I mean, I remember being a child in the 60s, and, you two will remember this as well, from the point of view that people just used to drink. Get into the 70s as well.
Oh, yeah.
No seat belts. I'm all right. I'll be able to drive home. Yeah. Come on, all you kids. Come on, all you get in. Everybody get in here, whatever. And, I had a few uncles that have crashed cars quite often. And as kids, we were always ushered somewhere on a Sunday morning. Where's your daddy going? Oh, he's going to pick up Uncle so-and-so's car or whatever it is. That it's.
Really?
Yeah, because they crashed it and it was left there, but it was just a matter for it was the normal thing to do, drink and drive.
Right. And when Barbara Castle, who was the Secretary of State for Transport, when she brought in the ban, I mean, she was considered. It was said, oh, she doesn't drive. She's a woman. She's hopeless, isn't it terrible? I don't know how many lives it saved, but certainly, I have to say, certainly all through the 70s, if you got a drink driving ban, well, that was a bit of bad luck. Now, people think, God, do you really have a problem?
But it is strange, actually, how different society was and how little we take, we're conscious of it. I mean, that is one area in which society was different. Drink driving, people not wearing seatbelts.
Yeah.
I was watching a film the other day where it was filmed in a restaurant, and the people puffing away at that.
Yeah. And car seats
think,
for children.
My God, none of us would put up with that.
Yeah, we were just shoved in the back in a bassinet as babies, but no.
So, Isabel, you were saying the last time that things had got worse. Actually, sometimes they've got better. They've got better. We can go into pubs without walking out smelling like a cigarette pack.
In 45 seconds, Scarlett, can you tell us the difference, beer goggles and courage?
There is this myth that when you're drunk, particularly when men are drunk, that they'll try and pick up anybody and anybody is attractive. And beer goggles. And what they're saying is, this isn't actually true, is that what you have is Dutch courage, and you're more likely to try and approach somebody that you fancy, but you still don't fancy the unfanciables.
Oh, right, OK.
Right. That doesn't mean you won't go to bed with them.
A cruel message. The people who are rejected even by drunken men. That's terrible.
That's pretty bad. David Mellor, Scarlett Maguire, a pleasure as always.
Yeah, thank you.
Come back and see us sometime soon.
In the meantime, here is your Wednesday forecast with Rachel S.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So to start Wednesday, it's been a much brighter morning than it was yesterday with plenty of sunshine around. We have already seen some showers across the north and west, and elsewhere we'll start to see that cloud bubbling up, allowing some showers to develop as we go through the rest of this morning. Though we will start to see those showers peter out from the west as we head into this afternoon. Temperatures today will be similar to what we saw yesterday, so highs maybe into the low 20s, but still feeling pretty pleasant in that sunshine with those light winds. Now, as we head through the rest of this afternoon and into this evening, slowly we'll see those showers petering out from the west, so plenty of clear spells, especially across northern and eastern areas. But looking down towards the southwest, we've got clouds and outbreaks of rain moving in during the early hours of Thursday. So a warmer start there, but further north and east, a pretty chilly start to the day. So throughout Thursday, we'll slowly see this cloud and rain making its way northeastwards. Always drier and brighter across Scotland and the far northeast, but for some central parts of England and maybe the far east of East Anglia, starting to see some cloud into the afternoon. Heaviest rain will be across the far south, where we could also see the odd thunderstorm. So temperatures a little bit more muted than of late, but still getting into the high teens or just into the 20s.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Right, stay with us. We're going to have more for you on fears that stranded passengers will not receive any compensation after the air traffic meltdown. We'll have all the details on what's true and what the airlines actually have a duty
and
to
your
provide
experiences.
for you.
That's what.
This September, the GB News family is back together. From breakfast, right across the day, breaking the latest stories, and every evening. And don't forget the weekend. We've got the whole of the UK covered. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country, with fun, lively and intelligent conversation with the biggest guests. This September, we'll meet Chris and John. Thank you for choosing GB News. We're proud to be Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Repatriation flights begin amid warnings travellers hit by airline chaos could be denied compensation.
Hello there, very nice to see you. 9 o'clock is the time. It's a Wednesday, it's the 30th of August. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News, Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Thousands of British passengers could be denied any compensation due to the crisis being beyond government control. Repatriation flights will begin taking off from Gatwick this morning as some travellers face 10-day waits to get home.
Now, this comes as the Chief Executive of National Air Traffic Services says he is not ruling anything out as the cause of the meltdown, but that an initial investigation suggests it was due to misfiled flight data.
The London Mayor Sadiq Khan says he's sorry to those whose businesses have been hit by the ultra-low emission zone. Speaking to Sky News, he said the government's let people down and that bold action needs to be taken.
The Foreign Secretary will challenge China over its support of Russia in the Ukraine war. On a visit to Beijing today, MPs have hit out at the trip with former Conservative leader Ian Duncan-Smith, comparing it to appeasement.
And we'll bring you the latest forecast with Rachel Ayres.
It's a bright but chilly start to the day for many, but what does the rest of the day have in store and the rest of August? Join me later to find out more.
Our top story this morning is that EasyJet will begin operating rescue flights from London Gatwick this morning as the fallout from Britain's air traffic control meltdown continues.
Hundreds of flights were cancelled yesterday, with an estimated 250,000 passengers stranded in total.
Now, we're going to... we've had experiences, we've had you telling us what's going on, we've had officials from airlines, we have had travel advisors, whatever, but somebody who was at the coalface, you'll recognise her from her telly, from your telly, and her name is Jane Bolton. Lovely to see you, Jane. And if you don't remember the cult documentary series Airline, here's a little reminder.
I thought it's up to you. I promise you, I had a really. Yeah, no, but obviously we can't board you from a coffee shop. So big arrow there saying departures. You just have to keep following the arrow to departures, and then everybody when you go to departures. If I'd understood, what I'm saying is you really ought to make sure people do understand fully, because that screen up there. With all due respect, 138 passengers got on that flight this morning that haven't been here before either.
You should check your I've just been down to departures and they've told me the slots are brought forward to on time. So I can only pass on the information that I've been given to you.
On time is 1:50, not 2:45.
I can only pass on the information they give to me, and they tell me they brought the slot forward to on time.
I advise you not to do that.
I haven't lied to you at all. I've just passed you on what I was told.
Well, you know, I'm sure that's not how you do it by the rule book. Did you ever get into trouble with your bosses for any of that?
No, funnily enough. It's quite surprising, really.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what? The people were poking their fingers at you, and you got that day in, day out. You were presumably quite numb to a lot of the situations that they found themselves in. Did you ever lose your temper completely?
I think, to be fair, I mean, a lot of it you didn't see. The worst stuff wasn't on camera. You know, we got spat at people through cases. So, yeah, it was quite bad. But I think in the moment you understand, I suppose, that it's someone's emotions coming out, because it was quite stressful and people were quite upset. But, yeah, I think, you know, there were days, really bad days, where we would, a few of us, go back into the staff room, have a few tears sometimes, get it out and then go back. Yeah, well, yes, days
But you
were
know,
hard.
Jane, all the people, there is this axiom that, you know, the customer's always right, and anybody's ever worked in a shop or facing the general public, you'll know that's completely wrong. The public is rarely right. But, however, what I do think about general public is that they just want someone to listen to them, someone to hear, do you appreciate the situation that I'm in? And this is what airlines are really bad at, and that is the frustration and anger. No one seems to know anything on the ground.
No, I think it depends on the situation. I think, obviously, whenever there is any disruption from the people that are at the airport, from their perspective, we are very reliant, or were reliant, on what operations were telling us what to do. And sometimes things were still being worked out in the background, so you actually didn't know sometimes what to tell people. And obviously nobody wants to hear that. But you're in a difficult situation. Do you lie and say, yeah, you're going to be going in an hour, and actually that's not going to happen? It's never an easy situation, especially recently with what's happened. People won't know what's going on.
Of course.
And so, talking about what's going on at the moment, does your heart go out to your sort of former colleagues, the guys at the coalface dealing with it? And what would your advice be? Because, you know, in a way, you almost just need to be a punch bag, don't you? So people can have their like 5 minutes of frustration vented.
Yeah, I do feel from my colleagues and people that work in the airport, but I do also feel from a passenger's perspective how awful and frustrating it is. I mean, I've just come back from holiday myself and, you know, they've gone away. Most people have spent their money, so to be faced with a situation of having to rebook a flight, for me, for a family of 5, probably wouldn't be able to afford to do that and accommodation.
Yeah.
And, of course, the airlines' hands are tied because it's not their fault.
Yeah.
So you've got the staff not being able to physically help anybody and the passengers that can't afford to help themselves. So it's a terrible situation.
Looking at you in that clip, and that was 25 years ago, you reckon, so in the 90s, you were very assured, you were very confident for a young woman. I thought, did you feel confident, or did you rise into the job? Look at you, your wee bones are hardly formed. But you did have an assuredness about you, which, you know, whether you're right or whether you're wrong, I would go with you. I would believe in you, because you sounded as if you knew what you're talking about.
Yeah, I did. I did know what I was talking about. Maybe sometimes didn't come across in the best way. But, yeah, I think ultimately, you know, the job was there to ultimately get the passengers away on time and do what you could for them. So, yeah, hopefully, and when I did get information, hopefully I was portraying that to the passengers. But I think the most difficult situations that you saw was when we had major disruption and we didn't know what was happening from one minute to the next, unfortunately.
What should the airlines learn from what's gone wrong, say, this weekend?
I think as an airline, I think I would be looking at answers as to how does this happen? How do we have a system that, if it is down to one flight plan going in, how is there no backup to that? How is there no backup system in place? Considering how many thousands of aircraft it's looking after basically every hour. Why does it go wrong so badly?
But I suppose the public think that you've got so many aircraft sitting there just parked up, ready to, we've got trouble in Ibiza, just fly out a plane there and turn people around. It doesn't work like that, does it?
It doesn't work like that. For every plan, you know, they need to know what's in the air when, so that there's no collision. So it's, you know, it's there for a good reason, but when it goes wrong, it goes drastically wrong.
Well, Jane Bolton, it's been fascinating reminiscing about what even then was a tough industry to work in. I imagine it's even harder now.
I think so, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on this morning. Appreciate
Lovely
it.
meeting you. And is it? Did you get sort of addicted to the colour orange? Or?
Well,
this is actually red.
You're on message.
No, I haven't worn orange for many years, can I say?
Who told you that was red?
My eyesight.
Thank you very much indeed. Lovely talking to you. Jane from Airline in the 90s.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of all things red, we can speak to the Shadow Secretary of State for Women and Equalities, Annalise Dodds. Good morning to you. Also on message with the colour theme. Glad to see you got the memo there. Listen, I want to talk to you about the ultra-low emission zone, first of all, if that's OK. We didn't get a chance to speak to you as the ultra-low emission zone was expanded yesterday. But a member of your Shadow front bench has said that the timing in all of this is not right. What's your own position?
Well, I think that is the case because we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis right now. And obviously, the Conservative government said to different local areas, you know, whether that's London or other local authorities and areas, that they needed to impose charging schemes. But frustratingly, particularly in the case of London, they've not listened to those calling for actual support to be provided to people. So obviously Sadiq Khan has expanded the scrappage scheme. He's done everything that he could to try and support people in this case. But, you know, Labour's approach to these issues is very different to the Conservative approach. We think, you know, for example, with our plans for energy, that you need to be actually facing up to the cost of living crisis at the same time as putting those environmental measures in. That's why we'd be getting people's bills down with our measures on renewables. We just wish that the Conservative government listened. You know, for example, London wasn't provided with the support that was provided to Birmingham, and really the government should have listened on this.
But the measure that you have also said was not the right timing for yesterday is, as you know, hugely unpopular. Do you think that lifelong Labour voters in this really crucial part of the country in the general election next year could turn their backs on Labour? Could this cost you the general election?
Well, actually, I think there is an understanding of what the Mayor has been trying to do here. Obviously, the inner London emission zone really did get air pollution down. And, you know, some of the statistics here are extremely concerning in terms of the higher number of A&E referrals and people having to turn up there because of asthma attacks and even a death, obviously, that was linked to those high levels of pollution. And so clearly the Mayor has taken action. As I said, the Conservative government requiring that of local areas. But Labour's frustration has been in the middle of that Conservative cost of living crisis, that they've not been backing areas like London. The Mayor calling for more support. He's done everything he could to provide that scrappage scheme. It has been expanded now to all eligible Londoners. There has been quite strong take-up. Really, there should have been that backing from central government around this.
Annalise, as a man, I'd like to apologise to you this morning. I just feel embarrassed about the next subject that we're going to talk about, and that is pay equality. And particularly, your fear is for Britain's lowest paid women. And funny enough, I've just gone to the loo, and I've come out of the loo, and the lady that was cleaning them, I think about people like her, and I think about, rather than being paid the lowest wage, they should be paid the highest wage in the land. But what specifically is your fear about equalisation on pay?
Well, we really need to take action on this because the average woman's income has actually gone down by £574 since 2010 in real terms. So women's incomes have been reducing and the gender pay gap actually increased last year. So we need to retain protections around equal pay. Now, unless we have those, you could have companies just restructuring or outsourcing so that they can wriggle out of equal pay. It can get a little bit technical here, but what you need to ensure equal pay is that a woman can find a comparator, so a man who's doing a similarly skilled job who's paid more than her. If a business or a company or organisation is deciding, right, we're going to try and wriggle out of this by restructuring so that those kinds of claims can't be taken, then obviously that's going to be bad for that woman. But I would say, actually, it's bad for our whole economy. So this is bad for men as well. Because if people aren't paid in relation to their skills, then other things will be going wrong within organisations as well. It's obviously bad for our economy too, because lower paid people tend to spend more of their income. They have to. It's actually positive for our economy. So we need to get this sorted out.
OK. Annalise Dodds, Shadow Secretary of State for Women and Equality. It's good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. 9:30. Andrew and Bev are here. Britain's Newsroom. Good morning.
Good morning, Bev.
Hello. How are we?
Good.
Very good, thank you.
Well, I go to church most Sundays and Bev doesn't. This fits in interesting with a report on the front page of the Times today. They've done a survey of a lot of Church of England vicars. Only about 30% of them responded, actually. But even they're suggesting we no longer regard ourselves as a Christian country, which is an interesting talking point.
Yeah, really interesting.
Really interesting. And if you go back to the census last year, 46% identified themselves as Christian. It's not that people think we're now a Muslim, a Hindu country particularly, it's because a lot of people just don't identify with religion anymore.
And even if you don't have a structured religion, as I don't, I'm quite jealous of people who do, actually. And I must say, the last few years, I've had a renewed appreciation for people who have faith. Yeah. Because I like the fact that they often look to a higher power rather than a Prime Minister to make their decisions. It must be a lovely place to be, actually. But I do think that Christian values underpin who we are as a country, and I think that's the conversation that we're going to have. We've got an unbelievable video from Leeds Festival, the aftermath of Leeds Festival, which has made my blood boil. We're going to be talking about that. Latest from the airport.
You mean in terms of litter or...
Yes. Left behind.
The youngsters who support Just Stop Oil, you'd be astonished what they've left behind them.
But Notting Hill Carnival, the waste there, the rubbish there at the end.
I know.
A generation of litter bugs.
They just don't care.
Awful. Well, I think it's a sense that somebody will always pick up after them. Yeah. There's a sense now when it comes to litter. Well, the government will sweep it off the streets, or my mum will tidy my room. There's a mentality where I think with the young people, somebody will always... Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, it's also a throwaway culture, leaving all these tents that they've slept in for 3 days and then they're just gone.
But it goes beyond that. Drive down any motorway. Nobody cleans them up anymore. No. The verges, right, left, the overtaking verge, the hard shoulder, whatever it is. So what is it with these cretins that actually... But what is it? Yeah. What would make you, on a motorway, throw out a bit of
amazing.
cotton.
I know.
A lack of love for our country, like a lack of respect for the fact that we all should play a role, the lack of that voice in your head. It does come back to that, a lack of that treat people as you would like to be treated.
But who hasn't walked behind some bloke in the street who's chucked his sandwich wrap on the floor and not challenged him? Me, because I'm frightened now. If I do, I'll get punched in the face.
Yeah.
When it was a
part of the
Christian
problem.
country, you thought a bolt of lightning would strike you down. That's the difference. Fear. Fear is
Hey, the
gone.
day is young. Anything can happen by midday.
9:15 is the time. These guys up at 9:30.
Thank you both. We look forward to it. Coming up, we're talking about romance on the runway. Could you find your true love whilst you're stuck in a queue waiting for one of these planes? We'll meet one couple who did just that.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
The stories, you know, that you've been getting the past couple of days about travel chaos and people being angry passengers, we thought we'd end on a positive note, a bit of romance around the runway.
I love this story. So Lisa and Jamie are a couple that fell in love after their flight was delayed and they were in the queue together and, well, sparks started to fly. Joining us now to tell us how they met, good morning to you both, Lisa and Jamie. This is like the stuff of a movie.
Hi, we can't hear you, sorry.
Oh dear, a few technical issues.
Can you hear me? Can you hear? It got any closer? No? No? We're telling your story. They obviously can't hear us. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We will phone you back and we'll talk about romance on the runway as well. So while we're phoning them back, let me tell you a true story.
Oh, yeah.
It is always, I agree with you, it's the stuff of a film or a play or whatever it is. It's the great romance. One of my best friends met his wife. He sat beside her on a plane.
Really?
And the rest is history, as it were. And so this is always your dream. I used to get a big fat man who's about 42 stone.
Some people are into that.
Sweats quite a lot.
Just
There we
wasn't for
go.
you.
But there is Lisa and Jamie again. We were just telling your story and recounting your story, guys. Can you hear us now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thanks.
Lovely. Well, congratulations to you because they'll make the movie of you two. Who would you like to play you in the movie?
Well, I'd probably like to play myself, and if we could get Margot Robbie to play Lisa, that'd be great.
Right, well, then we can ditch him now, shall we, Lisa? That's outrageous.
So, Lisa, what attracted you to him, despite his devilishly good looks and his confidence there? And what was the spark?
I think his dark brown eyes. I think I looked and saw it, and his, lovely silver fox sort of thing. So I think it was that, and his smile.
She's quite nice as well, actually.
Oh, you're so generous with your compliments there, Jamie. I mean, how recent was this, and how long was this delay? How long did it take for these sparks to fly?
I think it actually happened in November 2019, and the delay was about 2 hours, I think, in total. So we had a little while in the departure lounge to kind of keep glancing across at each other and flirting a little bit.
The delay wasn't very long. We just went to the end of the runway, and there was just a warning light on the controls. So there was nothing major. It was just a case of just getting an engineer on to sort it out. So, but they didn't know that. But they're obviously safety conscious. So we got back to the airport and terminal in the queue for the drinks.
Oh, right. And then what about when it came to board? You were on the same flight. Were you seated nearby each other? Did you get to sit beside each other?
Yes.
Yeah, so we were sat in with my friends in row 1, and Jamie was sat in row 3. So there was only like a little old couple sat between us. And I kept making excuses to get up to look in the overhead locker to keep looking back at him, and he kept smiling at me.
I remember I was on a plane once, and I remember the passenger asked specifically to sit beside me. They moved everything around and they asked, could they sit beside me? It was Alex Ferguson.
Oh, fair enough. Different kind of love there.
No romance. It wasn't anybody like Lisa. It was Alex Ferguson.
So who made the first move? Where were you flying to? Did you, get together in your holiday destination, or how long did it take till you could really get together properly?
Well, yeah, we were sat on the plane and kept trying to find excuses to sort of make contact. And I had a serviette ready to write my phone number down before we got off the plane, because I thought, it's one of those situations where you kind of know when something's right. And I got up to go to the toilet, and the cabin crew had taken my serviette away. So when I came back, all I could find was a sick bag. So I wrote my note on a TUI sick bag.
On a sick bag? How brilliant.
My phone number.
Oh, it definitely is a script.
Yeah, I've still kept it and framed it. So,
So tell me, both of you, do you believe in fate? Then, do you believe this was meant to be?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so, because when we met up the second night when we were over, we all got together and met up at the Dubliner, and Rick said, we haven't had much luck. He hasn't had much luck going away with Jamie, because 6 months previous, he said we went to Mallorca for the weekend and it poured down with rain, and we flew from Bournemouth again. And Lisa and her friend said, that's funny, we went to Mallorca 6 months ago and it poured down with rain, and it worked out, it was the exact same week, so we would have been at Bournemouth Airport, and we were actually at the same hotel.
Oh, gosh, that is fate.
Well, yeah, so we were looking in photos of the previous holiday, and we were trying to see if we could see each other in the background, which we weren't there.
We look forward to reading the book. I have to say, we've got to go. We've got to say goodbye to you both now, but it's a beautiful story. Thank you for telling us it, Jamie and Lisa. Thank you very much indeed.
That's it from us. More from Andrew and Bev after this.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So to start Wednesday, it's been a much brighter morning than it was yesterday with plenty of sunshine around. We have already seen some showers across the north and west, and elsewhere we'll start to see that cloud bubbling up, allowing some showers to develop as we go through the rest of this morning. Though we will start to see those showers peter out from the west as we head into this afternoon. Temperatures today will be similar to what we saw yesterday, so highs maybe into the low 20s, but still feeling pretty pleasant in that sunshine with those light winds. Now, as we head through the rest of this afternoon and into this evening, slowly we'll see those showers petering out from the west, so plenty of clear spells, especially across northern and eastern areas. But looking down towards the southwest, we've got clouds and outbreaks of rain moving in during the early hours of Thursday. So a warmer start there, but further north and east, a pretty chilly start to the day. So throughout Thursday, we'll slowly see this cloud and rain making its way northeastwards, always drier and brighter across Scotland and the far northeast, but for some central parts of England and maybe the far east of East Anglia, starting to see some cloud into the afternoon. Heaviest rain will be across the far south, where we could also see the odd thunderstorm. So temperatures a little bit more muted than of late, but still getting into the high teens or